Chapter 2173. More than 10 Great Virtue Realm experts exuded an extremely powerful aura, causing the surrounding sky to shatter. Under the terrifying pressure, the experts below the Great Virtue Realm from Highest Mountain and Temple of Mastery were instantly forced to kneel on the ground. Their bodies trembled, and their faces were filled with fear. Even Great Tao Realm experts like the two old ancestors from the High Mountain Peak were terrified under the impact of the terrifying pressure. Even their souls were trembling. 8 against 15. The disparity in strength was too great. Moreover, the Great Virtue Realm experts on the mysterious Heavenly Palace's side weren't weak. Instantly, the arrogance of the experts of Ji Mountain, Chopping Sun Pavilion, and the others disappeared. They were like deflated balloons. Deflated? What's wrong with you? Why did you ambush us? We're allies. Chopping Sun Pavilion's ancestor looked at Muronyu and the others furiously. However, anyone could see the fear in the depths of his eyes. At this moment, Chopping Sun Pavilion's ancestor was already filled with regret. If he had known that the mysterious Heavenly Palace was so powerful, he wouldn't have dared to join forces with Highest Mountain to attack the mysterious Heavenly Palace. In fact, he wouldn't even have the heart to covet the mysterious Heavenly Palace. There was no choice. The disparity in strength was too great. Idiot! Who was the one who said that he wanted to kill us and then destroy the mysterious Heavenly Palace? Our mysterious Heavenly Palace was really blind. To actually find an idiot like you as an ally. Tian Shu mocked Chopping Sun Pavilion's ancestor mercilessly. Everyone, we were just talking tough earlier. We didn't really want to attack the mysterious Heavenly Palace. The reason why we gathered here is none other than to explore the mysterious Heavenly Palace. If our friend from the mysterious Heavenly Palace are also interested, we could go treasure hunting together. Highest Mountain's bald donkey forced a smile on his face, but it was a very ugly smile. I see, Muronyu said with a calm expression. However, Bald Donkey and the others heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that Muronyu had been fooled by them just like that. They were even cursing Muronyu in their hearts, saying that he was just an inexperienced brat. How could he be so easily fooled? However, this is still the territory of the occult Mystery Palace. You guys barging into the Heavenly Mystery Palace, I won't fuss about it either. But you guys have to leave something behind for us. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving. What is it? The faces of the bald donkey and the other patriarchs instantly turned gloomy. It's nothing much, just leave your lives behind. We don't need anything else, Muronyu said indifferently. The faces of Ji Gaoshan and the others changed. Is your mysterious Heavenly Palace really going to shed all pretenses of cordiality? Although you have twice as many people as us, if you fight with your lives on the line, both sides will suffer. Murongyu's face turned cold. Since you're not willing, then we can only take action. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. Boom, boom, boom. Before Murongyu finished speaking, the Great Tao Realm slaves, who had long locked onto the many patriarchs of the Highest Mountain, made their move simultaneously. Streams of incomparably terrifying energy instantly tore through the heavens, rushing towards the bald donkey and the others like raging waves. At the same time, Muronyu and the others had already retreated. Puffed, puffed, puffed. At the instant they made their move, the experts below the Great Tao Realm like Ji Gaoshan didn't even have time to react before they were blasted into clouds of blood mist by the terrifying energy dissipating into the world. In an instant, other than the 6 Great Tao Realm experts, everyone else was killed. This caused the bald donkey and the other patriarchs to feel great heartache. These people were all top-notch existences in their respective forces. Not only were they powerful, but they also held great authority. Without them, their forces would be in chaos. However, they only had time to feel the heartache for a moment. Right now, they were like clay bodhisattvas crossing a river, unable to even protect themselves. Puffed, they had long been prepared. The instant Murongyu's slaves made their move, they had taken out all sorts of treasures and unleashed their strongest attacks. At the same time, they still had to forcefully charge into the distance. However, although they were fast, they were unable to completely evade the attacks. At the instant after those experts below the Great Dao Realm were killed, the attacks of the 16 Great Dao Realm experts came crashing down. How terrifying were the strongest attacks of 16 Great Dao Realm experts! Bald Donkey Ji Gaoshan and the others had a deep understanding. Even if the 8 of them joined forces, they wouldn't be able to block it. If not for the fact that they had taken out their strongest Dharma treasures, they would have been blasted into smithereens. However, they weren't in a much better state now. All of them were spurting blood from the attacks. Although they weren't severely injured, the attacks of the 16 Great Dao Realm experts weren't limited to just one attack. Streaks of terrifying power continued to bombard him. Bald Donkey Ji Gaoshan and the others roared furiously. They could only endure these terrifying attacks. After a while, the patriarch of the Chopping Sun Pavilion, who was at the initial Dao realm, let out a tragic cry as he was blasted into smithereens. It wasn't that he was too weak, but that Murong Yu's slaves were too strong. There were multiple Dao lords amongst them. How could they block it? Originally, it was already difficult for the 6 of them to block it together, let alone now that they had lost one person. The pressure on Bald Donkey Ji Gaoshan and the others was even greater. Not long after, the patriarch of another ally of the mysterious Heavenly Palace was the second to die. Now, there were only 4 Great Dao Realm experts left. The 4 of them looked terrified and furious. They charged left and right, wanting to break out of the encirclement. However, how could they break out of the encirclement of 16 Great Dao Realm experts? This was especially true when there were several Dao Lord experts present. In less than 15 minutes, the 6 Great Dao Realm experts had all fallen. The price of killing them was that 2 of the initial Dao slaves were only slightly injured. The battle came and ended quickly. Murong Yu and the others in the distance didn't even see what was going on before Patriarch Ji Gaoshan and the other patriarchs were all killed. There's strength in numbers, Yao Guang said with a sigh. Under the attacks of 16 Great Dao Realm experts, Patriarch Ji Gaoshan didn't even have the strength to fight back. It was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Murong Yu nodded in agreement. No matter the situation, there was strength in numbers. Of course, everything was based on the foundation of strength. Otherwise, even if the entire mysterious Heavenly Palace swarmed forward, they wouldn't be able to kill Patriarch Ji Gaoshan and the others. Deputy Palace Master, what should we do next? Tianxian looked at Murong Yu. However, before Murong Yu could answer, an extremely loud and clear howl sounded from afar. Everyone looked toward the source of the sound, only to see a streak of light tearing through the void and shooting toward them from the distant horizon. The expressions of the 16 Great Dao Realm slaves changed slightly. With a flash, they had already protected Murong Yu in the center. At this moment, the stream of light also appeared in front of Murong Yu and the others. Master, Tianshu and the others were very happy to see who it was. The person who came was naturally the patriarch of the mysterious Heavenly Palace. However, the aura on his body was much stronger than before. Moreover, his power was unstable. It was as if he had just broken through and didn't have time to consolidate his cultivation. Where are those bastards from Patriarch Ji Gaoshan? Seeing that Murong Yu and the others were unharmed, Patriarch Ji Gaoshan asked anxiously. Back then, when he was in seclusion, he received a message from Murong Yu and the others. Originally, he wanted to break out of seclusion. However, perhaps because of his anger, he actually showed signs of breaking through. He originally still needed a long time to break through. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally chose to continue breaking through. Otherwise, if he went out like this, he would still not be a match. It was better to break through to the Dao Lord realm. That way, he would still have chance. Perhaps it was the huge pressure of the mysterious Heavenly Palace's destruction that suppressed Patriarch Ji Gaoshan, allowing him to successfully break through in a short period of time. After breaking through, Patriarch Ji Gaoshan didn't have time to attack his cultivation and directly rushed over. However, the battle was already over. They're all dead? Morongyu, your friends killed them? After knowing the truth, Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan's jaw almost fell to the ground. Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan could only use the word friends to describe Murongyu's slaves. Even if Morongyu told him that those people were his slaves, Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan wouldn't believe it. After all, how could a mere creation realm powerhouse have so many slaves? As for how Morongyu knew these people, Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan was quite curious, but he didn't ask. Morongyu nodded and smiled noncommittally. Master, what should we do next? Tian Shu looked at Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan, and then at Morongyu. After all, the two of them were the bosses here. While we were ambushing, some of my friends had already gone to the headquarters of Highest Mountain, Chopping Sun Pavilion, and other forces. I believe that they have successfully suppressed their headquarters by now. Now, we only need to go over and collect the fruits of victory, Morongyu said with a smile. Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan pondered for a moment, glanced at the 16 great Dao realm slaves, and said in a firm tone, Morongyu, this time, our Tianji Palace doesn't need anything. It was your friends who resolved the crisis of the Tianji Palace, and it was also them who suppressed Highest Mountain and other forces. In that case, the treasures of Highest Mountain and other forces can be given to your friends. As for our Tianji Palace, we don't have such a big appetite to swallow them. Morongyu pondered for a moment. Patriarch Zhi Gaoshan was speaking the truth. If the Tianji Palace swallowed the resources of those 6 forces, it would probably attract even more covetous eyes. At that time, the Tianji Palace would have even more enemies. Why not do Morongyu's friends a favor? Thus, Morongyu nodded in agreement. Those 6 forces were about the same as the Tianji Palace, or even stronger. It was just right to use their resources to nurture Shenzhen. Moreover, it was time for Shenzhen to leave the solar system. After all, the solar system was within the sphere of influence of the Tianji Palace, and Morongyu was both the Holy Lord of Shenzhen and the Deputy Palace Master of the Tianji Palace. It was still somewhat inconvenient for him to do things. Then let's move Shenzhen to Highest Mountain. Morongyu made a decision in his heart. Chapter 2174. After making the decision, Patriarch Seer hurried back, saying that he wanted to consolidate his new realm. He was afraid that he would fall back to the initial Dao realm. Morongyu could only be left speechless by this. Morongyu admitted that he was used to being a shopkeeper, but the heavenly secret ancestor was even more adept at being a shopkeeper than he was. In Patriarch Seer's words, he was at ease with Morongyu as the Deputy Palace Master. However, Morongyu did not intend to let Patriarch Seer appear. Just as he said, while killing the patriarchs, some of his slaves had already gone to the Highest Mountain and other forces and were about to reach the Highest Mountain. The nest of the Chopping Sun Pavilion was destroyed. He forcefully disbanded the Highest Mountain, Chopping Sun Pavilion, the Shang Temple, and other forces. And before that, of course, they had to plunder all their resources. Moreover, these forces were different from the Heavenly Mystery Palace. They did not have any branches. If there was only one sect, it would rule over countless star zones. The smallest star zone would have tens of millions, and the largest would even have hundreds of millions. Among them, the Highest Mountain had the most. It ruled over as many as 300 million star zones, which was 3 times more than the Heavenly Mystery Palace. After Patriarch Seer returned, Morongyu also disbanded the team and returned home. After returning to the solar system, Morongyu began to move the sect. After all, the solar system was only a galaxy and was not suitable for Shenzhen's development. Therefore, he wanted to move Shenzhen to a higher-level star zone. Among them, the Highest Mountain was the most suitable. Fortunately, the teleportation formation that led to the Highest Mountain was not destroyed. Otherwise, Morongyu could only bring Shenzhen and everyone else over in Hichuluoshu. That would be too shocking. Morongyu and the group of great Dao realm experts arrived at the Highest Mountain first. When they arrived at the gate of the Highest Mountain, Morongyu knew why the Highest Mountain had such a strange name. The mountain gate of the Supreme Mountain was huge. It was even bigger than the Yuan planet where the headquarters of the mysterious Sky Palace was located. In reality, this mountain was not just a mountain, it was also an origin star. An origin star that was as big as a mountain. It was truly magical. Moreover, this mountain was as tall as the dome of the sky. It was more or less the same to say that it was an indomitable spirit. Most importantly, the chi of heaven and earth at the foot of the mountain was quite dense. The higher one went, the denser the heaven-earth yuan chi became. The pressure was also increasing. At the highest point of the mountain, even initial Tao cultivators would find it difficult to withstand the pressure. As for the current Morong Yu, he naturally couldn't go up. The pressure was too strong, and he didn't want to go up and suffer. This made him really depressed. In the end, he could only set up the temple at a place where he and Shenzhen could reach. Otherwise, during the meeting, wouldn't he be the only one in the hall? As everyone's strength continued to increase in the future, they would gradually shift the temple net. Now, most of the Shenzhen disciples could only move around at the foot of the mountain at the lowest level. Morong Yu expressed a considerable amount of interest in this mountain. However, the ancestors of the Supreme Mountain still didn't know the secret of the Supreme Mountain even after so many years. Therefore, Morong Yu temporarily suppressed the curiosity in his heart. On the other side, after Shenzhen moved out of the solar system, Morong Yu handed the solar system over to the lunar sect. As long as the lunar sect was still within the mysterious Sky Palace's territory, they would still be taken care of by Morong Yu. However, how far the lunar sect could reach in the future would depend on the demon girl's ability. After Shenzhen moved to the Supreme Mountain, he didn't control the original territories of the Supreme Mountain and the Chopping Sun Pavilion. However, no other forces dared to interfere in these star regions. The 6 great forces joined forces to attack the mysterious Sky Palace, but in the end, they were destroyed by the mysterious Sky Palace. Now, the 6 great forces had been forcibly disbanded. Dozens of great Tao realm cultivators. This number shocked and terrified a large number of forces in the surroundings. Even if they joined forces with many other forces, the number of great Tao realm cultivators they had would still exceed this number. However, in alliance, who could guarantee that everyone was united? Meanwhile, on Morong Yu's side, everyone was united. If they launched a counterattack, which of the nearby forces could guarantee that they would be able to block their attack? Therefore, when Shenzhen moved to the Supreme Mountain, many of the nearby forces even sent envoys to deliver great gifts, expressing their willingness to be on good terms with Shenzhen. Their actions directly acknowledged Shenzhen's existence. At the same time, they also jointly acknowledged that the original territories of the Supreme Mountain, the Great Success Divine Temple, and the other forces all belonged to Shenzhen. Although they were all based on this large star region, no one dared to touch them. Therefore, the territories of the 6 great forces naturally became Shenzhen's territory. Even those great Tao realm forces didn't dare to do anything to them, let alone the forces of various sizes in the territories of the 6 great forces. After the various great Tao realm forces, these forces also sent gifts to Shenzhen, expressing their acknowledgement of Shenzhen's position as the overlord. They also promised to pay tribute to him every once in a while. After obtaining the treasuries of the 6 great forces and their resources, Shenzhen's wealth was already over 10 times that of the Heavenly Mystery Palace. Now, he had even received the acknowledgement of these forces. As long as those 60 great Tao realm cultivators didn't leave Shenzhen, Shenzhen would rise rapidly in the future. It wouldn't be a problem for him to become a force on the level of the Heavenly Mystery Palace within a short period of time. Of course, this was just the beginning. What Morong Yu wanted was to turn Shenzhen into the strongest force in the entire chaos. Of course, there was always a huge difference between ideals and reality. Right now, the real Shenzhen was only a force equivalent to the Heaven Realm. Under the intimidation of the 60 great Tao realm cultivators, Shenzhen welcomed a stable period of development. Under the massive influx of resources, the strength of every single person in Glory Sect began to undergo an earth-shattering change. Among them, the one who underwent the greatest change was Zhu Xiaoning. Of course, her strength wasn't that great. Her changes mainly came from the auction house. Shenzhen Auction House. After Shenzhen moved to the highest mountain, Zhu Xiaoning's astonishing business prowess exploded. In a short 10,000 years, she opened the Shenzhen Auction House all over the 300 million star regions where the highest mountain was originally located. Although there were only 300 million auction houses for now, the daily income was a terrifying astronomical figure. Moreover, Zhu Xiaoning's short-term plan was to open the Shenzhen Auction House to all of Shenzhen's territories, which was close to 1 billion star regions. Moreover, it wasn't just the star regions. She wanted every star system to have at least one Shenzhen auction house. He finally knew what it meant to be a business expert. Zhu Xiaoning was one. The wealth that 1 billion auction houses generated for Shenzhen every year was immeasurable. It was definitely much more than the annual income of the mysterious Heavenly Palace. In order to reward Zhu Xiaoning, Yu directly assigned 5 great Dao Realm cultivators to be her bodyguards. He didn't want such a talent to be assassinated. Time flowed like water, and 1,000,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. During this period of time, Shenzhen welcomed a spurt of development. A large number of Heaven Realm cultivators appeared. At the same time, people like Zhao Jiqing and the others had already reached the true Self Realm. In a short 1,000,000 years, Shenzhen's strength had undergone tremendous changes. What if they were given another 1,000,000 years? 1 reincarnation cycle, or even 2 reincarnation cycles? How powerful would Shenzhen become? How powerful would Yu become? During this 1,000,000 years, nothing happened on Shenzhen's side. Therefore, Yu's life was rather comfortable. Shenzhen, the rising Sundao Mansion, and Hundan side were places he frequented. Moreover, because Hichu Luoshu could accelerate time, Yu's strength had increased terrifyingly. Peak of the Genesis realm. His soul, cultivation, and physical body had all reached the peak of the Genesis realm. The reason why his soul had broken through so quickly was that Yu had used the soul power that Hundan emitted. In any case, Hundan had a lot of soul power and was very powerful. After Yu removed the evil power in Hundan's soul power, he could directly absorb this soul power. During this 1,000,000 years, Hundan and Yu had formed a deep friendship. However, he didn't tell Yu why Hundan had landed here and why he didn't want the Soul Tribe to know where he was. However, Yu didn't ask too much. When he should have known, he would have known. At the peak of the Genesis realm, Yu's soul and strength had already merged 1,000 energy vortexes. Because of this, his battle prowess and lethality were extremely terrifying. It surpassed his own cultivation by 2 major realms. In other words, Yu's current battle prowess had already reached the peak of the true self realm. He was only 1 step away from reaching the selfless realm. However, this step was too difficult to cross. After all, the higher the cultivation realm, the stronger the strength, the harder it was to cross the gap in battle prowess. Unless he could merge even more energy vortexes now. According to his estimation, if he could merge 10,000 energy vortexes now, he would have terrifying battle prowess that surpassed his own cultivation realm by 3 major realms. The increase in strength could not do without battles and even life and death experiences. Yu had fought with 60 Dao Realm powerhouses before, and those 60 Dao Realm powerhouses had watched Yu become stronger and stronger. A feeling appeared in their hearts. In 2 reincarnation cycles, perhaps Yu's cultivation realm had already surpassed theirs. He was at the Dao Monarch realm, and he might even have attained the Dao Lord realm. Then, with Yu's terrifying combat strength, would his combat strength attain the legendary Dao Lord realm after he attained the Dao Lord realm? Even if he was unable to attain the Dao Lord realm, he would probably be invincible in the Dao Lord realm, right? They had complicated feelings, but they weren't jealous. Conversely, they hoped that Yu would attain the Dao Lord realm as soon as possible, because in that way, they might be able to recover their original bodies in less than 2 reincarnation cycles. What's going on these past few days? I've been feeling slightly uneasy. Could it be that Shenzhen, the secret palace, or even myself are in danger. But who dares to touch me now? Murong Yu sat within the palace while his brows were knit together slightly. The stronger he was, the stronger his ability to sense danger would be. Chapter 2175. With Shangzhen's current strength, the surrounding forces did not dare to touch Murong Yu at all. So what if they coveted Shangzhen's resources? They did not have the ability to make a move. As for the more distant and more powerful forces, they were not interested in a small force like Murong Yu's. After all, there was always someone better. A force like Shangzhen's level was considered powerful in the surrounding stars, but there were many forces even more powerful than Shangzhen. Since Shangzhen was not threatened, the danger that Murong Yu felt should have come from him. However, he just couldn't figure out why danger would befall him for no reason at all. One must know that he had not been to any other place for 1,000,000 years. Unable to figure it out, Murong Yu finally gave up on guessing. At worst, he would just deal with whatever came his way. There was nothing to be afraid of. He would continue to cultivate. Many years passed like this. During these years, Murong Yu would sometimes feel uneasy, but sometimes he would not feel that way. However, the more it was like this, the more vigilant Murong Yu became. This was definitely the calm before the storm. Whoosh! On this day, a crack suddenly appeared in the void not far in front of Murong Yu. Just as Murong Yu was alerted, a stream of light shot out from the void and shot toward him. Murong Yu narrowed his eyes slightly and reached out his hand to grab the stream of light. At this moment, he saw that the stream of light was a message talisman. However, it was not from anyone he was familiar with. The aura of the message talisman was rather unfamiliar. There were only a few words on the message talisman. Murong Yu, if you don't want Shangzhen to be destroyed, quickly come to planet Yangyuan alone. I'll give you 1 day. If you don't show up in 1 day, then you can just wait for Shangzhen to be destroyed. Remember, you can only come alone. Murong Yu's face instantly darkened. The person who sent the communication talisman obviously knew who he was and even had his aura. Otherwise, the message talisman wouldn't have been able to reach him. However, who was that person? Was it his enemy? Or someone from Shangzhen? What was this person trying to do? Murong Yu had no idea where planet Yangyuan was. Even after searching through his memories, he couldn't find anything. Could this person be a prankster? You just want to play with Murong Yu? As soon as this thought appeared in Murong Yu's mind, he ruthlessly erased it. This incident reminded him of the crisis he had sensed recently. Could it be that the danger he sensed was related to this matter? This was related to the survival of the entire Shangzhen. Whether it was a prank or not, Murong Yu had to take it seriously. Therefore, he summoned Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others. Holy Lord, planet Yangyuan is just a barren planet. It's at the edge of Shangzhen's territory. It's a godforsaken place. Usually no one passes by it. Could it be that some ancient treasure has appeared there? When Zhang Ao found out that Murong Yu had summoned them to ask about a godforsaken planet, he couldn't help but laugh. There isn't any ancient treasure. I have some matters to attend to. Guard Shangzhen for me. If you see anything wrong, immediately activate the protective formation. As he spoke, Murong Yu took a step forward and disappeared in front of Zhang Ao and the others. Something's not right. Why does the Holy Lord want to go to planet Yangyuan? And why is he in such a hurry? Zhang Ao and the others looked at each other. They all felt that something was wrong. Why don't we send some powerhouses over as well? Zhang Ao said hesitantly to the others. Zhang Ao, don't try to be smart. The Holy Lord must have made arrangements for this. If you ruin the Holy Lord's plans, how are you going to take responsibility? We'd better guard Shangzhen. Otherwise, if something happens to Shangzhen, how are we going to face the Holy Lord? Duan Muqing said in a low voice. It was obvious that Duan Muqing had a premonition that something was going to happen. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said that. The highest peak mountain was in the middle of Shangzhen. Shangzhen's territory was so vast that it would be difficult for a rebirth or chaos realm cultivator to circle Shangzhen. Therefore, the highest peak mountain was very far away from planet Yangyuan. Most importantly, Murong Yu hadn't been to many places in Shangzhen's territory before. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Yu wouldn't have been able to get to planet Yang Yuan in a day. He'd definitely given Yu a huge problem. However, who was Yu? He was a chaotic celestial body. Well, being a chaotic celestial body really had nothing to do with this. Yu had always been meticulous in his work. Because of Shenzhen's territory, although Yu hadn't been to many places, Hichu Luoshu's teleportation points were spread across 1 billion star regions. Of course, Yu wouldn't just hand over the teleportation points to someone else. There were too many people around. What if someone found out? Therefore, he'd given the Hichu Luoshu teleportation points to Zhu Xiaoning. Every Shenzhen auction house had at least one teleportation point. Yu had wanted to take precautions. After all, he didn't want Shenzhen's auction house to be robbed. With the teleportation points, he could bring Shenzhen's experts over immediately if something big happened. This time, the teleportation points were a huge help to Yu. After teleporting directly to the star region where planet Yangyuan was located, they were still extremely far away. However, with the teleportation points and Yu's speed, they should be able to reach planet Yangyuan within a day. Finally, just as the day was about to pass, Yu appeared on planet Yangyuan. On the tallest mountain peak on planet Yangyuan, a young man with an indifferent expression sat cross-legged on the ground, looking in Yu's direction. It was obvious that this was the person who'd sent Yu a message. When Yu saw the young man's expression changed to one of shock, as if he were shocked that Yu had managed to arrive in time. However, the young man quickly calmed down. Yu, as expected of Shenzhen's Secmaster, your speed really isn't just for show. You actually managed to get here within a day. And you're only at the first level of the Genesis realm, the young man said with a smile, putting away the shock on his face. Yu's cultivation level had already reached the peak of the Genesis realm, but habit had caused him to hide part of his cultivation level. Right now, he was only showing that he was at the first level of the Genesis realm. The young man's cultivation level wasn't high, only at the peak of the heaven tier, so he couldn't see Yu's true cultivation level. However, his cultivation level was just a disguise. This was because Yu felt a strong soul ripple from the young man's body. He should be a soul cultivator, most likely a member of the soul tribe. However, why would someone from a soul tribe want to find him? The only one who had a grudge against him was Elder Hun Xin. Could that Elder Hun Xin be such a bastard? After so long, he still wanted to kill him? A hint of caution flashed across Yu's eyes, but on the surface, his expression didn't change as he gradually approached. Who are you? Why did you ask me to come here? Good question. The young man laughed and stood up. I'm sure this question has been bothering you for an entire day. If you don't know why I'm here, then wouldn't I be too cruel? I hate cruelty the most. Then I'll tell you. I'm from the Soul Tribe, and Elder Hun Xin sent me here. As for the reason, it's very simple. You've offended someone you don't dare to offend. So you deserve to die. So kill yourself. Otherwise, if I attack, you won't die so easily. TSK. You're also a member of the Soul Tribe. If I devour your soul, then I can increase my strength. The cultivation technique that Elder Hun Xin imparted to me is really brilliant. As long as I devour enough souls, I can continuously break through. Perhaps the young man thought that Yu was definitely going to die, so he started talking to himself. He didn't mind that Yu knew more. Yu's expression was cold, but he was still shocked by the young man's words. Elder Hun Xin possesses a cultivation technique that allows him to continuously improve his cultivation by directly devouring souls. If he were to constantly devour the souls of the Soul Tribe, then wouldn't he be able to break through to the Dao Lord or even Dao Father realm? Not to mention Dao Fathers, there wouldn't be many Dao Lords who were a match for him. Based on how petty Elder Hun Xin was, he would absolutely not spare Yu. If Hun Xin were to break through, then Yu wouldn't be able to resist him at all. Not to mention that Yu only had 60 slaves at the initial Dao realm and Dao Lord realm. Even if he had 60,000 slaves, it wouldn't be enough for a single slap from a Dao Lord. So, Murong felt that he had to stop Hun Xin from breaking through. However, he didn't have the strength to do so right now. So, he could only rely on the strength of others. Elder Hun, she wasn't bad. So long as he revealed Elder Hun Xion's evil cultivation technique, then he would definitely die if Elder Hun Xion had devoured the souls of Soul Tribe members. However, before that, he had to kill this young man or save his life from this young man. Murong could sense that the young man's soul battle strength was definitely not weaker than his. In fact, it was even stronger than his. Murong soul battle strength had already reached the peak of the true self realm. If the young man was still stronger than him, then he would be at the selfless realm. Don't think about how to kill me. I know that there's a virtue realm expert hiding in Shenzhen. That's why I lured you here. And you're really stupid. You actually came here alone. You're courting death. You can't blame me for that. The young man laughed coldly. Waves of soul ripples emanated from his body like a tide. He was ready to kill Murong. Wait, what benefits did Elder Hun Xion give you? You're just his dog in the end. If you don't kill me, I can make you the Vice Sect Master of Shenzhen. You can even become the Sect Master of Shenzhen. Right at this moment, Murong suddenly shouted coldly. The young man was stunned when he heard that. His movements slowed down. Chapter 2176. As a Soul Clan cultivator at the Selfless Realm, Hun Dong was doing well in the Soul Clan. Hun Xion took good care of him. However, Elder Hun Xion was a Dao Lord. He had a large group of initial Dao Realm Soul Clan experts under him. He had countless Selfless Realm subordinates like Hun Dong. Hun Dong was only at the first level of the Selfless Realm. This kind of strength was not valued at all. Therefore, the treatment he received was only slightly better than the average person. Compared to the resources and treatment Murong, the Sect Master of Shenzhen, the difference was like heaven and earth. They were not on the same level at all. If he could become the Sect Master of Shenzhen and control the resources of 1 billion star regions, even Elder Hun Xion would not be able to do so. Therefore, when Murong made this suggestion, Hun Dong was stunned. Murong's words had struck a chord in his heart. Hun Dong had to admit that he was tempted. However, this thought had just appeared in his mind when he immediately extinguished it. Murong did not know who Elder Hun Xion was, but he knew. He was a vicious and merciless person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. If Hun Dong dared to betray Elder Hun Xion, he would definitely die. Even if he fled to the ends of the earth, he would definitely not be able to escape Elder Hun Xion's pursuit. Just like Murong, even after 1 million years, Elder Hun Xion still made his move in the end. The mission that Elder Hun Xion gave him had to be completed. Otherwise, it would be disobeying orders. As for Shenzhen's resources, they belonged to Elder Hun Xion. Hun Dong could not touch them at all. Otherwise, he would definitely die. Therefore, Hun Dong could not help but shudder. Then, he looked coldly at Murong. Murong, don't try to use flowery words to save your life. From the moment I accepted this mission, you were dead for sure. So die. Hun Dong laughed sinisterly. He increased his soul power again, wanting to kill Murong with one blow. 10,000 layers of soul waves. At this moment, Murong roared in his heart. His soul power, which had long been raised to the limit, surged out. He had unleashed the ultimate technique of the soul race. Under the control of Murong, the vortex within the soul force spun even more crazily, devouring the soul force. Its might became even more terrifying. The moment Murong attacked, Hun Dong prepared to attack. However, the distance between the two wasn't far. The instant Murong launched his attack, Hun Dong Jin didn't even have time to react before he was blasted into the soul space by the myriad soul waves. Hun Dong was in Selfless Realm Powerhouse after all. Even though he was only at the first level of Selfless Realm, his reaction speed was extremely fast. When Murong's soul force bombarded his soul space, he had already started to mobilize his soul force to defend himself. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, dozens of soul attacks bombarded his soul. The defense that Hun Dong had condensed in a hurry was instantly pushed down the slope by Murong Yu's soul attack. On the other hand, the myriad soul waves came one after another, one blow after another. Often, before the soul waves in front dissipated, the soul waves behind had already rushed over. Furthermore, several layers of soul waves overlapped together and attacked him. Puffed, puffed, puffed. Hun Dong did not know how terrifying Murong Yu's soul attack was. Okay? He also did not know that Murong Yu actually knew the myriad soul waves, the ultimate technique of the soul race. Okay? Therefore, he was directly met with tragedy. His soul was instantly severely injured. This was also because he was in selfless realm soul cultivator. Otherwise, he would have died under Murong Yu's sneak attack. Chaos Blade. Shadow Step Power. At the same time that Murong Yu launched the myriad soul waves, other attacks from other aspects also burst out at the same time. When the Chaos Blade was launched, the surrounding void and even Hun Dong's power and soul power started to become chaotic. When Murong Yu stepped on the Shadow Step Power, it directly froze Hun Dong's body, power, soul, and even thoughts. Hun Dong, who was already close to a tragedy, was really in a tragedy. When his power, soul, body, and even thoughts stopped, he was already a fish on the chopping board. He could only be slaughtered by Murong Yu. Attacks were launched in a frenzy. Hun Dong's soul was already severely injured. This time, it was blasted into pieces. Murong Yu pursued relentlessly. Finally, Hun Dong's soul was directly shattered into countless pieces. Murong Yu did not dare to only destroy a part of Hun Dong's soul and leave a part behind. As a soul cultivator, he naturally knew how terrifying a soul cultivator was. Even if only a trace of his soul was left, he might be able to turn over a new leaf. Therefore, Murong Yu directly killed Hun Dong. Plop! Hun Dong's body knelt down weakly. There was no longer any breath of life. However, even though Hun Dong was already dead, he still had a look of unwillingness on his face. He was a selfless realm expert. He was actually killed by Murong Yu's storm-like attacks. He did not even have the chance to fight back. Of course, he was unwilling. After Hun Dong, Murong Yu also sat on the ground with a plop. Then, he panted heavily. His heart finally calmed down. Careless. Hun Dong definitely died because of carelessness. Otherwise, if he hadn't spoken so much nonsense and had treated Murong Yu as his opponent, the one who would have died wouldn't have been him, but Murong Yu. After Murong Yu arrived, although he was furious, he still maintained his calm. He treated Hun Dong as the strongest opponent in his life. At the same time, he was tempting Hun Dong with a huge temptation. At the same time, Murong Yu suddenly launched an attack. It was also because of Murong Yu that he was able to kill Hun Dong. Otherwise, if it was someone else, even if he had reached the peak of the true self realm, he might not be able to kill Hun Dong in a sneak attack. As a soul cultivator, Murong Yu knew how terrifying a soul cultivator's attack was. However, he also knew how fragile a soul cultivator's soul was, especially when he was facing a soul cultivator. Of course, if it was just a soul attack, Murong Yu still could not kill Hun Dong. The power of the Shadow Step and the Chaos Blade were of great help to Murong Yu. It could be said that the reason why Murong Yu could kill Hun Dong was that his soul attack, the power of the Shadow Step, and the Chaos Blade worked well together. Otherwise, he would definitely not be able to kill Hun Dong successfully. After resting for a while, Murong Yu took away Hun Dong's spatial treasure. Then he blasted Hun Dong's body into powder with a punch. Hun Dong is dead. I think Hun Xian already knows. With Hun Xian's vile heart, he will definitely not give up if he can't kill me this time. Next time, I'm afraid he will send a more powerful opponent. Murong Yu frowned slightly. He was definitely not a person who would sit and wait for death. He wanted to take the initiative to attack instead of passively facing the enemy. After all, if Hun Xian kept sending people over, Murong Yu could not guarantee that he would be fine. Moreover, now that he had a big family and business, who knew if he would threaten Murong Yu with Zhao Jiqing, Murong Xian, and the others? Murong Yu had seen too many of such things. The probability of it happening was very high. However, he could only leave the initiative to Elder Han Shi. However, there was no evidence at all. Swish, Morong Yu's figure flashed, and he disappeared from where he was. When he reappeared, he had already arrived at the planet where Hun Dan had suppressed himself. Boy, why do you look so murderous? Hun Dan did not know what level of expert he was. Even though he had suppressed himself, he could still sense Morong Yu's existence at the first moment. Hun Dan, does your soul clan have a cultivation method that can enhance the soul realm by devouring the soul power? Morong Yu came straight to the point. He did not hide anything. Hun Dan's face suddenly changed. Morong Yu, have you seen anyone who cultivates this cultivation method? Morong Yu nodded. Although he had not seen it personally, Hun Dong had said it himself. He would not make it up, right? Therefore, he told Hun Dan everything he knew from Hun Dong. Bastard! Hun Dan's face turned livid. His eyes were flashing with anger. What's going on? Seeing Hun Dan's expression, Morong Yu could not help but be shocked. You don't know. That cultivation method doesn't devour ordinary souls. It devours the souls of the soul clan. Only the souls of soul cultivators are worth devouring. That's the taboo cultivation method of our soul clan. It has always been sealed. I didn't expect that old bastard Hun Xin to cultivate this cultivation method. If he continues, our soul clan will be in danger. In danger of being exterminated? Morong Yu was a little surprised. He did not expect that the cultivation method would be so serious. Soul Devourer great? The soul clan will be in danger once the law is out. This is a saying that has been passed down in our soul clan. Is it the soul devourer great? The law is the cultivation method that Hun Xin cultivates. This cultivation method is very heaven-defying. He only needs to devour the souls of soul cultivators to enhance his realm. But if he wants to become a Tao ancestor, he must devour the souls of all the people in the world. So serious? Morong Yu was shocked. It was not enough to devour the people of the soul clan. He had to devour all the souls in the entire universe. However, there was no other life in the entire universe. So what if Hun Xin became a Tao ancestor? What was the point? A sense of crisis. If what Hun Dan said was true, Morong Yu would definitely be in danger. Morong Yu would become very sensitive and active when it concerned the lives of himself and his family. Hun Xin hasn't cultivated successfully yet, has he? Let's kill him first. Besides, who can guarantee that Hun Xin can cultivate to the Tao ancestor realm? I think it's difficult for him to even reach the Tao Lord realm. We must plan ahead. Morong Yu, it's up to you. You don't want to be killed by Hun Xin in the future, do you? Hun Dan looked at Morong Yu with a serious expression. If the sky falls, there will be tall people to hold it up. Why do you want me, a short person, to hold it up? Morong Yu looked at Hun Dan speechlessly. It was not that he did not want to do it. It was just that the gap between them was too big. It was very difficult. Chapter 2177. Morong Yu, I believe you can do it. Hun Dan looked at Morong Yu with affectionate eyes. Morong Yu shuddered, then turned around and left. He really didn't want to do it. He didn't want to die. Morong Yu, don't go. Hun Dan was anxious and shouted at Morong Yu. However, Morong Yu continued to walk out without looking back. Morong Yu, do you want me, a disabled person, to do it? Once I break the seal, I will be attacked by the evil power. By then, I may become a devil who kills people without blinking. Do you want to see me like that? Morong Yu still ignored him and walked out quickly. Hun Dan was speechless. He could only change his words. All right, you don't have to do it. You just need to take my identity token to Elder Han Shi and tell him about it. He will know what to do. If it was just an errand, he could do it. After all, it was related to him. Therefore, Morong Yu stopped and looked at Hun Dan, the first genius of the Soul Clan. I can run an errand for you. But what benefits should I get? You know, I have a big family now. Hun Dan was angry. Boy, I've already taught you the Soul Clan's most powerful combat skill, the myriad waves of soul. What else do you want? The Soul Clan's most powerful combat skill should not only be the myriad waves of soul, right? There should be something else. If I run an errand for you, I will risk being killed by Hun Xian. It's up to you. Morongyu looked at Hun Dan and said lightly. Hun Dan was speechless. What Morongyu said was the truth. However, the Soul Clan didn't have many skills of the most powerful combat skill. Soul waves at the 10,000 layers soul wave level were even rarer. Morongyu might not be interested in other combat skills. How about this? I will teach you a group soul attack skill. It is very powerful. It's a lethal weapon in group battles. Morongyu shook his head. He already had the Spirit Storm, so he wasn't interested at all. Following that, the bastard continued to list out a few of the Soul Race's clan-suppressing battle skills and cultivation techniques. But Morongyu rejected them all. These so-called cultivation techniques couldn't even compare to his Saint's Soul Slash, Soul Storm, and other soul battle techniques. I can make the decision to let you enter the soul pool 3 times. If you're still not satisfied, then forget about it. In the end, Hun Dan became angry. Okay, deal. Morongyu agreed immediately when he thought of the soul pool's heaven-defying ability. That was 3 chances, after all. In addition to the previous opportunity, he had a total of 4 opportunities to enter the Soul Lake. It should be known that the majority of the Soul Race only had 1 chance to enter the Soul Pool to be baptized in their entire lives. Give this jade slip and my identity medallion to Hun Shi, and he'll know what to do. You can get out now. After giving the item to Morongyu, Hun Dan directly asked him to leave. You're too inhospitable. If you do this, I'll be in a bad mood. If I'm in a bad mood, I won't be able to travel fast. If I'm slow, I don't know when I'll reach the Soul Race. Sai, it's really sad. Morongyu shook his head with a helpless expression. Hun Dan immediately showed a smile on his face. Morongyu, take care. That's not bad. I'm in a good mood. I should be able to travel fast. Morongyu smiled and left quickly. Seeing Morongyu's figure disappear from his sight, Hun Dan couldn't help but curse. Kid, after I suppress the evil power, I'll deal with you right away. After leaving the planet where Hunning was, Morongyu entered Hichu Luo Shu. Then, he teleported to the Soul Race's territory. Although he said that to Hun Dan, he didn't dare to neglect this matter. Otherwise, the longer he delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. However, after arriving at the Soul Race, Morongyu didn't look for Hun Shi immediately. Instead, he looked for Hun Ming. Hun Ming hadn't seen Morongyu for more than 1,000,000 years, so he was quite happy. However, at this time, Hun Ming had grown into a 17 or 18-year-old youth. His strength had also improved greatly. He had reached the true self-realm. His cultivation speed was extremely fast. Big brother Morong, why are you looking for my father? Is there something important? When he saw Morongyu asking him to go find his father, and when he saw Morongyu's serious expression, Hun Ming immediately knew that something must have happened. Morongyu nodded. However, since it was a serious matter, he didn't tell Morongyu. Elder Hun Shi, why do you look so sad? Morongyu couldn't help but ask when he saw Elder Hun Shi. Elder Hun Shi's eyes lit up. Come. Morongyu, sit down. Have you heard any news about Hun Dan? Hun Ming was quite concerned about the number 1 genius of the Soul Race. He ignored Hun Ming, who was beside him. However, Hun Ming seemed to be used to this situation. He rolled his eyes and sat down next to Morongyu. Hun Dan is fine, Morongyu replied. However, he didn't reveal Hun Dan's location. This was what Hun Dan had told him over and over again. Father, are you still worried about our clansmen dying? You're not the only elder in the Soul Race. Is there need to worry so much? Hun Ming rolled his eyes. Elder Hun, she glared at Hun Ming. What do you know? Our clansmen have been dying every day. If we can't find out the truth, who knows how many more will die in the future? Hearing the father and son's conversation, Morongyu's heart skipped a beat. Elder Hun Shi, do your dead clansmen have lost their souls? It seems like they were devoured? Morongyu asked. Elder Hun Shi and Hun Ming both looked at Morongyu in shock. They asked in unison, how did you know? Morongyu smiled, but didn't say anything. He just asked, do you have any suspects now? Elder Hun, she had a lot of questions in his heart, but he still answered Morongyu. We suspect that a beast that specializes in devouring souls has appeared in the soul race's territory. However, we don't have any leads. Morong sneered. A beast? Did Elder Hun Xin come up with this idea? This time, only Elder Hun she was shocked. If Morong knew about the deaths of those people from the Soul Tribe, then only a few people knew about it, since Elder Hun Xin was the one who came up with this conjecture. Only the elders knew, and no one had leaked it out. In that case, how did Morong find out? When he saw Elder Hun Shi's expression, Morong knew what was going on. It was as he had guessed. Elder Hun Xin must have devoured the souls of those people. Even if it wasn't him, it had to be his people. After all, even Hun Dong knew that cultivation method. How could others not? However, what puzzled Morong was that Elder Hun Xin must have obtained the Soul Devourer Great Art long ago. It was a cultivation method, but it hadn't happened before. It should have happened before, but Elder Hun Xin had done it in secret. No one had discovered it. Could it be that Elder Hun Xin was so anxious that he had begun to devour the souls of the soul race to increase his cultivation? Morong, I see a problem in your expression. What do you know? Please tell me. Elder Hun Shi's expression became serious. Morong didn't answer. He just looked at Hun Ming. Little Ming, this is a matter of great importance. It concerns the safety of the soul race and even the entire universe. If you know, can you guarantee that you won't say a word? Hun Ming nodded solemnly. Then, Morong looked at Elder Hun Shi and said, You should know better than me that aside from the myriad soul waves, the Hun clan has another taboo cultivation technique, right? You mean the Soul Devourer Great Art? Law. Elder Hun Shi's expression changed slightly. He was about to ask about the Soul Devourer Great Art. When he was about to ask what the Soul Devourer Great Art had to do with the deaths of the soul race, he suddenly realized. Then he asked, Are you saying that someone in the soul race has cultivated that forbidden cultivation method? That's impossible. We've suppressed that cultivation method. No one can get close to it. Morong sneered. Elder Hun Shi, are you sure that no one can get close to it? I've seen a Soul Devourer Great Art before. He's a soul race cultivator called Law. Then, Morong gave a simple explanation of Hun Dong's situation. Hun Dong is Elder Hun Xion's subordinate. Are you saying that Hun Xion stole that forbidden cultivation method and is already cultivating it? Elder Hun Shi's expression changed again. Morong didn't say anything. He just handed the jade slip and identity token that Hun Dan had given him to Elder Hun Shi. He didn't want Hun Shi to believe him. However, if Hun Dan spoke, Hun Shi would definitely believe him. As expected, after reading Hun Shi's message, Elder Hun Shi's expression became extremely serious. I didn't expect Elder Hun Xion to be so crazy. No, I must stop him from doing this. However, Hun Xion's authority and strength aren't inferior to mine. I have to make a fuss about this. Elder Hun Shi muttered to himself. I don't know how long Hun Xion has been cultivating this cultivation method. No one knows how strong he has become. I suggest that we invite the soul race's ancestor. Otherwise, no one can suppress Hun Xion. That's all I have to say. Morong gave Hun Shi a suggestion. Perhaps that's the only way. Elder Hun Shi's expression became even more serious. Little Ming, accompany Morong. I'll leave for a moment. Before he finished speaking, Hun Shi had already disappeared. Morong rolled his eyes. He'd wanted Hun Shi to arrange for him to go into the soul pool. He hadn't expected Hun Shi to leave in such a hurry. Was he going to sneak in again? There was a world of difference between sneaking in and going in openly. Chapter 2178. Hun Shi went to deal with Hun Xion, leaving only Morong and Hun Ming. In the end, Morong, who was bored to death, returned to Hun Ming's manor. He did not dare to walk around in the Soul Tribe's territory. This was Hun Xion's base camp, and Hun Xion was determined to kill him. If he was killed by Hun Xion's people here, it would be an injustice. When he was free, Morong could only enter the Hichu Luo Shu to continue cultivating. The strength of the peak of the true self realm was really not enough. He needed to break through. Whether it was a breakthrough in the realm or a breakthrough in the power vortex, it was inevitable. Of course, if he broke through in both aspects, it would be a happy ending. However, the higher the realm, the harder it was to break through. But that was how cultivation was. Therefore, Yu cultivated whenever he had time. After a few days, of course, he did not make any progress. When he appeared in Elder Hun Shi's hall again with Hun Ming, he saw that Elder Hun Shi looked depressed. Elder Hun Shi, did things not go well? Hun Shi nodded with a gloomy face. I've already reported this to the higher-ups, but they said that they still need to investigate. If they investigate, Hun Xin would have already reacted. What can they find out by then? Even if it's Hun Dan's words, no one will believe it. Yu's face was gloomy. This matter concerned the Soul Tribe, and even the living beings of the entire universe. Logically speaking, the higher-ups of the Soul Tribe should have arrested Elder Hun Xin directly. Why were they dragging this out? Moreover, although Elder Hun, she had only said this, it seemed that the matter was more complicated. Could it be that Elder Hun Xin has already controlled some of the Soul Tribe's experts? Those Downlord-level existences were also his people. Is that why they won't investigate? Once this thought appeared, it could not be stopped. In the end, Yu could not help but speak out his guess. This time, Elder Hun Shi's face became more and more unsightly. This possibility is not impossible. Elder Hun Shi suddenly became angry when he thought of the reactions of some of the higher-ups that day. However, in addition to his anger, he also felt a chill in his heart. Those people up there were all Downlord-level cultivators. If they were inclined towards Hun Xin, or even controlled by Hun Xin, then the Soul Clan would not be far from extinction. After all, if Hun Xin had the ability to control the Downlord, who in the Soul Clan would be a match for him? Once Hun Xin devoured the souls of all the Soul Clan cultivators, just how terrifying would his strength be? No, we must stop this. Hun Xin gritted his teeth, but he immediately felt a strong sense of helplessness rising from his heart. What could he use to stop Hun Xin? He was merely a Downlord. Perhaps he was no longer a match for Hun Xin. Hun Dan. Elder Hun Xin suddenly thought of Hun Dan. Perhaps Hun Dan was the only one who could save the Soul Clan at this moment. Therefore, he looked at Yu and said that he wanted to see Hun Dan. Yu shook his head. Hun Dan was his friend now. Although Elder Hun Shi was not bad, who knew if he had any bad intentions towards Hun Dan? Now that Hun Dan had sealed himself, Hun Dan would be in danger if Hun Xin wanted to harm him. Yu, the Soul Clan is now at a critical moment of life and death. I must see Hun Dan. Elder Hun, she was anxious. I can discuss this with Hun Dan. If he's willing to see you, I'll bring you there. Otherwise, I don't want anything to happen to Hun Dan, Yu said calmly. All right. Elder Hun, she knew that Yu was telling the truth, so he compromised in the end. Then, Yu left the Soul Clan and teleported to the planet where Hun Dan was through Hichu Luoshu. This matter concerned his life and death, so Yu did not dare to be negligent. Kid, is the matter settled? Before Yu could speak, Hun Dan's voice was heard. Yu stared at Hun Dan angrily. Look at me. Do I look like the matter has been settled? Then, Yu told Hun Dan about his suspicion and Hun Xin speculation. Hun Dan was worried immediately. If Hun Xin has really controlled those Path Masters, the Soul Clan is not far from being exterminated. I'm afraid that no one in our universe can resist Hun Xin. Yu rolled his eyes. Wasn't Hun Dan talking nonsense? He was not here to listen to his nonsense. He was here to see if Hun Dan had a solution. Hun Dan, what's your current strength? Can you temporarily release your seal? Can you go and kill Hun Xin? Hun Dan was silent instantly. Looking at the silent Hun Dan, Yu knew that there was a chance. Otherwise, Hun Dan would have denied it long ago. It's not that I can't temporarily release my seal and give up on suppressing myself. But if I do that, the evil power that I tried so hard to suppress will counterattack again. But, Hun Dan gritted his teeth. For the sake of the Soul Clan, I've decided to release my seal first. Hearing that, Yu heaved a sigh of relief. Hun Dan's words were enough. Then, he did not have to travel back and forth, and he did not have to face the terrifying existence of the virtue and virtue realm. Facing these people who were much stronger than him, Murong Yu felt really pressured. Boom! Just as Murong Yu heaved a sigh of relief, a terrifying aura was released from Hun Dan's body. Murong Yu, who was caught off guard, was directly sent flying by the terrifying aura. In the end, Murong Yu was sent flying out of the planet where Hun Dan was. He then smashed a few planets in the distance before he stopped in the starry sky. Hun Dan, you bastard! You must have done it on purpose. The anger in Murong Yu's heart surged. With a roar, he flew back from afar. When he returned to the place where Hun Dan had sealed himself, he saw an ordinary young man standing there and looking at him with an evil smile. Who else could it be but Hun Dan? However, Hun Dan already had a physical body. His strength was restrained. He stood there and did not show his strength. He was very ordinary. Who would know that he was the #1 genius of the Soul Clan? I'm sorry. I haven't released my seal for a long time. So, I couldn't control my strength and sent you flying. I'm really sorry. Seeing Murong Yu rushing back angrily, Hun Dan spoke first. Immediately, Murong Yu's words were stuck in his throat, unable to come out. Now that Hun Dan had said so, if he continued to mention this matter, wouldn't it make him seem petty? Seeing Murong Yu's aggrieved look, Hun Dan smiled and thought, "Boy, I'll let you be arrogant. I did it on purpose. What can you do to me?" Swoosh. At this moment, Hun Dan flew up into the sky. Just when Murong Yu wanted to go back to the solar system and not get involved in this matter, Hun Dan's big hand grabbed him and took him away. Murong Yu was stunned. Hun Dan, I don't have to get involved in this matter, do I? I'm just an ant. Murong Yu rolled his eyes and said, as a member of the Soul Clan, how can you not get involved in this matter? Hun Dan said calmly, damn it, you're pushing me in a fire pit. If you're no match for Hun, Xin, and the others, won't I be in trouble? Murong Yu cursed in his heart. However, he did not say anything. He was grabbed by Hun Dan and flew back to the territory of the Soul Clan. As for the teleportation through Hichu Luoshu, forget it. It would be a tragedy if Hun Dan, this bastard, killed him because of the money. Of course, with Murong Yu's understanding of Hun Dan would not do that. However, the fewer people who knew about Hichu Luoshu's secret, the safer he would be. One must always be on guard against others. It was unknown if Hun Dan had reached the Downlord realm. His speed was extremely fast. Murong Yu could not be compared to him at all. If Hun Dan's speed was compared to Murong Yu's, Hun Dan's speed was like a cheetah, while Murong Yu was like a snail. A few days later, they arrived outside the territory of the Soul Clan. When Hun Dan saw that the territory of the Soul Clan had become bigger, he was obviously stunned. However, he quickly entered the territory of the Soul Clan. However, as soon as he entered the territory of the Soul Clan, Murong Yu felt that something was wrong. Everyone was in a state of panic. Yes, the Soul Clan cultivators, who were usually arrogant and haughty, had a panicked expression on their faces. Could it be that something major has happened in the Soul Clan in the past few days? Murong Yu pondered in his heart. His extremely powerful divine perception immediately pierced into the memories of a comparatively weaker Soul Clan cultivator. Murong Yu's face instantly turned gloomy after he read the cultivator's memories. On the other hand, Hun Dan's expression was unsightly as well. Obviously, he'd read the memories of some Soul Clan cultivators as well. Moreover, he'd read even more memories, and he'd learned even more things. Just 3 days ago, Hun Xin had suddenly launched an attack. He'd captured Elder Hun Shi's faction, and some other elders' factions, and imprisoned them. Besides them, many Grand Dao Realm, Selfless Realm, and True Self Realm cultivators of the Soul Clan had been captured as well. Elder Hun Xin had announced to the outside world that Elder Hun Shi and the others were traitors of the Soul Clan, and they'd colluded with other clans in an attempt to destroy the Soul Clan. So they'd struck first and captured all of them in one go. Today, they were going to kill them. Most members of the Soul Clan were aware of the character of Elder Hun Shi and the others. Especially after Elder Hun Shi and the others had been captured, Elder Hun Xian's people had suddenly become arrogant. They'd completely regarded everyone else as inferior, while they themselves were superior. They'd cursed and even beat them up wantonly. However, the members of the Soul Clan did not dare to voice their anger. This was because Elder Hun Xian and the others could kill them at any time. The souls of those who'd been killed were gone. Obviously, the souls of those who'd been killed had all been devoured by Elder Hun Xian's people. In just a few days, the Soul Clan had lost hundreds of thousands of powerhouses. Therefore, all the Soul Clan cultivators were in a state of panic. No one knew if they'd be the next to die. Chapter 2179. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Hun Dan said coldly with a murderous aura. Obviously, Hun Xian's plan had been exposed. However, he had falsely accused Elder Hun Shi and the rest of them of being traitors. Those who were captured at the same time should all be on Elder Hun Shi's side. As for those who were still alive, they were either under Elder Hun Xian's control or under Hun Xian's command. Basically, under the control of those elders, the cultivators of the Soul Clan did not dare to make any moves. Murong looked at Hun Dan. Today, we'll have to ask Elder Hun Shi and the rest. What do you think? What do I think? I'll see who dares to touch them. Hun Dan said with a murderous aura. He and Murong both understood that although they said they would ask Elder Hun Shi and the rest, the final result would be that Elder Hun Shi and the rest souls will be devoured by Hun Xian. Once the souls of the great virtue realm cultivators were devoured, Hun Xian's strength would increase tremendously. In the central square of the Soul Clan. At this moment, countless Soul Clan cultivators were standing around the square. Tens of millions of Soul Race cultivators knelt in the huge plaza. These cultivators looked haggard and their eyes were lifeless. However, all of them were furious. These people were the so-called traitors. Today, Elder Hun Xian would kill them as a warning to others. Behind the square, there was a huge spectator stand. Elder Hun Xian sat in the center of a spectator stand. Beside him stood his trusted subordinates. Among them, there were a few who had reached the Downlord level. Originally, Murong wasn't sure of the strength of those people. The only reason he was certain was because Hun Dan had told him. At this moment, they were mixed in the crowd, looking coldly at Hun Xian and the rest on the spectator stand. There are 3 Downlord level cultivators and Hun Xian whose cultivation level is unknown. Hun Dan, do you have the confidence to turn the tide? Or even kill Elder Hun Xian and the rest? Hun Dan rolled his eyes and stared at Murong speechlessly. However, he did not say anything. It seemed like he was really confident. The Soul Clan is our home. We will never allow betrayal or subversion. On the other hand, Hun Xian and the others have committed treason. They want to join forces with the other races to destroy our race. We have zero tolerance for such traitors. Therefore, today, I will concentrate on killing these traitors as a warning to others. Other than Hun Xian and the others, I know that there are a lot of Soul Race members who are Hun Shi's accomplices. But it doesn't matter. In the future, I will find them one by one and kill them one by one. I won't allow traitors to destroy our race. Hun Xian stood up and glanced at the crowd. Then he spoke slowly. The many Hun clan cultivators outside the square could not help but tremble when they heard this. Did Hun Xian mean that it was not enough for them to kill Elder Hun Shi and the others, and that they wanted to kill even more of the so-called traitors? Everyone was even more anxious. In fact, some of them even had thoughts of escaping from the Soul Race. They didn't know what Hun Xian was planning, but Murong knew. Elder Hun Xian's words today were all to pave the way for him to devour souls in the future. In the future, he would be able to casually devour the souls of Soul Race cultivators. The reason was open and above board. That person was a traitor to the Soul Race and deserved to die. How arrogant and conceited. Hun Dan said murderously. His eyes flashed with a terrifying murderous intent. However, Elder Hun Shi, who had been forced to kneel in the square, did not make a sound. It was not that they did not want to speak, but they had been sealed. They did not even have the ability to speak. Today, I will kill all of you with my own hands." As he spoke, Elder Hun Xian slowly reached out with his large hand. He was about to press it down on Elder Hun Shi and the others in the square. "Hun Xian, you bastard! You cultivate the soul race's forbidden technique. You devour the souls of our clansmen to increase your cultivation level. We only found out about this and wanted to kill you. We never thought that you would turn the tables on us. You damn bastard. Even if you kill us today, you can't wipe away the clarity of the soul race cultivator's eyes. Hun Xian, you must die. Hun Xian, we won't let you go even if we die. Hun Xian, you and your lackeys are the traitors of the soul race. You are all sinners of the soul race." At this moment, the prisoners, who had been sealed and could not even speak, began to curse loudly and angrily. The crowd did not believe that one person was cursing. However, with so many people cursing Elder Hun Xian in unison and Elder Hun Xian's perverse behavior over the past few days, how could the spectating soul race cultivators not know the truth? Anger. Everyone was furious. However, they could only be angry but did not dare to say anything. This was because Elder Hun Xian and the others were too powerful. Even if they caused a ruckus, they would be the ones to die in the end. Elder Hun Xian was furious. He glanced coldly at the 3 down masters behind him. Didn't they say that Elder Hun Shi and the others had been sealed? Why were they speaking now? Hun Dan, you did this, didn't you? Morong, you turned to look at Hun Dan beside him. Although Hun Dan had done it very discreetly, he could not escape Morong Yu's senses. Moreover, he realized that not only had Elder Hun Shi regained the ability to speak, but the seal on his body had also been removed. He had regained his strength. However, they did not do anything. They were still kneeling where they were. Perhaps Hun Dan had already transmitted his voice to them. As long as Hun Dan made his move, they might cooperate with him. However, even so, Hun Dan's strength was far inferior to Elder Hun Xian's. Even if he mobilized all the remaining cultivators of the soul race, they would not be as good as Elder Hun Xian. After all, peak combat strength determined everything. A Downlord level existence was enough to annihilate everyone below the Downlord level. However, although Hun Dan was furious, he did not seem to be too worried. He even seemed to have a well-thought-out plan. Morong Yu did not know what Hun Dan was up to. Therefore, he did not bother to pay attention to him. After all, even if the sky fell, there were tall people to hold it up. If something went wrong, he would run away immediately. With his current combat strength, he did not have the ability to turn the tide. "Traitor, how dare you slander me? Die!" Hun Xian's face was livid. He shouted angrily, and his hand was about to press down. At this moment, he suddenly felt that he was wrapped up by a huge force. Then, the scene in front of him changed. When Morong Yu came back to his senses, he realized that he was already standing on the spectator stand in front of Elder Hun Xian. "Damn you, Hun Dan!" Morong Yu came back to his senses immediately. He cursed at Hun Dan in his heart. Obviously, it was all thanks to Hun Dan that he was able to appear here. "Kid, help me buy some time." At the same time, Hun Dan's voice rang in his ears. "Damn you, why aren't you the one buying time? I'm just a Genesis realm cultivator." Morong Yu was furious. Even so, he had to face Hun Xian. It was obvious that Hun Xian had seen him. A cold light flashed across his eyes. Suddenly, an extremely strong aura of death rose from Morong Yu's heart. Hun Xian was going to kill him. Morong Yu had goosebumps all over his body. He wanted to rush in a Hichu, Luo Shu, and run away immediately. But the chances of him escaping were not high. In a moment of desperation, Morong Yu shouted, "You're not Hun Tai's biological father." Hun Xian had wanted to slap Morong Yu to death, but he was shocked by Morong Yu's shout. Hun Tai, who was on the spectator stand, was shocked. He looked at Morong Yu in disbelief. Seeing that his shout in a moment of desperation had shocked Hun Xian, Morong Yu had an idea. He continued to make up a story. "You've been treating Hun Tai as your own flesh and blood, but you don't know that you're just raising someone else's son. Didn't your wife tell you who Hun Tai's biological father is?" "Don't ask me how I know. I just know that Hun Tai is not your son." It's your wife who cheated with someone else. He's a bastard born out of love. Speaking of this, Murongyu whispered in his heart, Hun Xian's wife, I'm sorry to you today. But since you're with Hun Xian, you're probably not a good person. You don't mind being slandered by me, do you? Bastard, you're talking nonsense. Hun Tai was trembling with anger. He pointed at Murongyu and shouted, Bastard, who did you say was spouting nonsense? Murongyu retorted, I'm talking about you. Hun Tai was furious. Ha ha! Look, Hun Tai admitted that he's a bastard, didn't he? Murongyu burst out laughing. Puff! People in the square and around the square couldn't help laughing secretly. Hun Tai was really stupid. Hun Tai, shut up. Elder Hun Xian's face was livid with anger. He shouted angrily. Hun Tai was confused and angry. Father, am I really not your son? Am I really the bastard of my mother and someone else? Puff! Murongyu burst into laughter. So did the audience. How stupid was Hun Tai to be able to say such words? Elder Hun Xian was so angry with his stupid son that he almost fainted. He waved his hand and directly sealed Hun Tai's ability to speak, so that this idiot wouldn't say something stupid again. Hun Xian, the hat on your head is a cuckold. You've been cuckolded, but you still help others raise their son. You're so pitiful. Tell me, even if you become a Tao ancestor, so what? This stain in your life can't be erased. Since you're so pitiful, I'll take pity on you. How about I tell you who Hun Tai's biological father is? When Murongyu said this, Hun Tai, who was hiding in the crowd, trembled in his heart. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. It seemed that something was going to happen to him. Sure enough, dig out your earwax. Listen to me clearly. Hun Tai's father is Hun Dan, the first genius of the Soul Clan. Your wife had an affair with Hun Dan, then she gave birth to Hun Tai. Damn you. Hun Dan wanted to kill Murongyu. At this time, Murongyu turned his head and glanced at Hun Dan in the crowd. His face was full of smiles. Hun Dan, this is my revenge. Ha ha! Chapter 2180. Hun Dan. When Murongyu uttered those two words, everyone had different reactions. Some people were shocked, while others were at a loss. After all, although Hun Dan was the #1 genius of the Soul Clan, he had disappeared for too long. It had been so long that some of the Soul Clan members could not even remember him. However, which of the older Soul Clan members did not know of Hun Dan's existence? Elder Hun Xian's expression changed with a swoosh. It became even more unsightly than before. Moreover, his eyes flickered with a complicated look. Could it be that I was right? Seeing Hun Dan's current appearance, Murongyu could not help but feel a little hesitant. If he had unintentionally said the truth, it would be a joke. Little bastard, you're talking nonsense here. You just want to save Hun Shi and the others. You traitor. Let me tell you today, even if the Heavenly King comes, you traitors will die without a doubt. Now I'm going to kill you. As he spoke, Elder Hun Xian attacked again. Hun Dan, you bastard. Why don't you hurry up and attack? Murongyu's heart was in his mouth. At this moment, he felt that Hun Xian's killing intent was extremely strong. He had a feeling that no matter what he said this time, Hun Xian would not stop. Moreover, Hun Xian was at least a terrifying existence at the Tao Lord realm. Murongyu had no room to resist at all. Boom! Elder Hun Xian's furious attack directly smashed the spectator stand where Murongyu was, and even the void where he was standing, into dust. This guy's finished. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people could not help but sigh in their hearts. However, they soon discovered that Murongyu was standing on the other side of the spectator stand, safe and sound. However, there was an extra person beside him this time. It was an ordinary young man that most people could not recognize. It must be this young man who had saved Murongyu from Elder Hun Xian's hands. However, this young man looked ordinary, just like an ordinary cultivator. How could he have the ability to save someone from Hun Xian's hands? Hun Dan, on the spectator stand and around the square, there were still people who recognized Hun Dan. They immediately cried out in surprise. Bastard? Many people who didn't know better thought that these people were cursing. Moreover, these voices belonged to Tao Lords. An existence of that level was actually so angry that he scolded others. Thud, thud, thud. Elder Hun Xan looked at Hun Dan as if he had seen a ghost. Meanwhile, he took a few steps back. He was frightened by Hun Dan. One had to know that Hun Dan's title as the #1 genius of the soul race was not an exaggeration. His strength was extremely terrifying. Moreover, Hun Dan had disappeared for so many years. Now that he was back, who knew how powerful he was? Under the pressure, even Elder Hun Xian was frightened. It's me. Hunting took a step forward and looked at Elder Hun Xian with an indifferent expression. Elder Hun Xian, how dare you? Not only did he cultivate the taboo cultivation method of the soul race and devour the souls of his clansmen to cultivate, but he also wanted to kill Elder Hun Shi and the others who discovered his secret and wanted to eliminate him. You are the true sinner of the soul race. So the one who should die is you. Elder Hun Xian gazed at Hun Dan with a complicated expression, and he was actually at a loss for words. The members of the soul race outside the square started to whisper in discussion. Who exactly is he? Who is Hun Dan? Idiot. You don't even know the #1 genius of the soul race? So, someone spoke of Hun Dan's origins. After that, everyone was shocked. After that, all of them were extremely excited, because they'd seen hope. If Hun Dan was able to stop Elder Hun Xian, then the crisis the soul race faced would be over. Moreover, they wouldn't have to live in fear all day long. Elder Hun Xian took a deep breath and stared fixedly at Hun Dan. Hun Dan, let me ask you a question. Is Hun Tai your illegitimate son? Pooh, pooh. Murong Yu and Hun Dan spat out blood at the first possible moment. Murong Yu had just spoken casually, but he hadn't expected that Elder Hun Xian would actually take it seriously. Or perhaps, Hun Tai was really Hun Dan's illegitimate son? As for Hun Dan, he was speechless. First, he stared at Murong Yu fiercely. Then, he sneered at Elder Hun Xian. Do you think my son is as stupid as Hun Tai? He's your son. That's right, because both of you are as stupid as your son. I don't believe that you're not Hun Tai's father. Elder Hun Xian's face instantly turned red. In fact, he regretted at the moment he said that. Wasn't he asking for a rebuke and a humiliation? However, Hun Xian was an old fox after all. He quickly calmed down. Hun Dan, did you come out to save Hun Shi and the others? I'm afraid I've disappointed you. Today, I'd like to learn from you, the #1 genius of the soul race. I'd like to see if you've made any progress after so many years. While speaking, Hun Xian took a step forward and approached Hun Dan. Hun Dan waved his hand and sent Murong Yu away from the stand. When Murong Yu's feet touched the ground, he found that he was already in front of Elder Hun Shi. At this moment, Elder Hun Shi and the others had all stood up. Every one of them was emitting a terrifying aura. They were glaring at Hun Xian and the others on the stand. They were ready to attack. Today, even if they had to destroy the soul race's territory, they would fight until the end. Murong Yu, are you okay? I have to thank you for this. If you hadn't invited Hun Dan, I'm afraid we would have been wiped out. Elder Hun, she stared at the stand. However, his face darkened as he spoke to Murong Yu. It's just a small matter. You guys, on the other hand, were taken down in just a few days. I can see that your strength isn't bad. Why are you so useless? Murong Yu asked curiously. Elder Hun Shi and the others didn't show any signs of resistance. Otherwise, many of the soul race's people would have died. Hun Shi and the others were taken down overnight. It was as if they had been captured without a fight. Elder Hun Shi's face darkened even more when he heard Murong Yu's words. I can't bear to look back on the past. Let's not talk about this anymore. That old bastard Hun Xian is really despicable and shameless. He actually drugged us. We can only blame ourselves for not being on guard. Otherwise, how could we have been taken down? Murong Yu rolled his eyes. He had already told Hun Xian that this person was a bad guy. However, Elder Hun, she hadn't been on guard. He deserved to be taken down. When he saw Murong Yu's expression, Elder Hun, she knew what Murong Yu was thinking. He didn't say anything. He just looked at the stands. At this moment, the great battle on the stands was about to begin. Hun Xin, surrender. You're no match for me. If you surrender, I might just suppress you forever. However, if you're stubborn, I'll just kill you, Hun said in a low voice. Cut the crap. I like to see how strong you are. Hun Xin roared. He took a step forward, and his body turned into a stream of light as he charged toward Hundan. Boom! At this moment, Hundan finally made his move. He threw out an ordinary punch. However, it was this ordinary punch that Elder Hun Xin couldn't block. In the blink of an eye, he arrived first. Hundan's punch landed on Elder Hun Xion's body and sent him flying. Elder Hun Xion's body smashed through a large area of the void. He spat out blood in the air. With his swoosh, he disappeared from everyone's sight. He was sent flying by Hundan. How powerful! Elder Hun Xion was a Tao Lord after all. However, he couldn't withstand a single blow. How terrifying was Hundan's strength, as expected of the #1 genius of the Soul Clan. Good. Kill that bastard Hun Xion. After the shock, everyone cheered loudly. They were all overjoyed. However, there was no joy on Hundan's face. He was as calm as an ancient well. As expected of the #1 genius of the Soul Clan. You injure me with a single blow. Not bad. Hun Xion's voice was heard slowly. At the same time, everyone saw Elder Hun Xion flying toward them from afar. Although he was in a sorry state, he didn't seem to be seriously injured. Everyone was greatly disappointed. However, a cold light flashed in Hundan's eyes. He looked at Hun Xion, who was flying toward them. He knew how powerful that punch was. Even if he couldn't kill Hun Xion with a single blow, it shouldn't be a problem to severely injure him. It could only mean that Hun Xion was quite powerful. Swoosh! Hundan suddenly disappeared from where he was. The moment he disappeared, Hun Xion, who was in the air, suddenly let out an earth-shattering scream. With a bang, he was stepped on by Hundan. He couldn't withstand a single blow. If you 3 old men don't attack now, when will you? Hun Xion roared angrily. Swoosh! Swoosh! Whoosh! The 3 Tao Lords who were sitting cross-legged on the spectator stand finally attacked. Their figures flashed, and they surrounded Elder Hun Xion and Hundan. Hundan, give up. You can leave the Soul Clan. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless, one of the Tao Lords said coldly. Hundan's eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. As Tao Lords and ancestors of the Soul Clan, the 3 of you can't differentiate right from wrong and are helping the evildoer? Do you want the Soul Clan to be annihilated? Once Hun Xion gains power, you won't have a good ending. The 3 Tao Lords' faces immediately turned ugly and complicated. However, they shook their heads in the end. Leave. Otherwise, we'll attack. Hundan was furious. These 3 old men are really stubborn, aren't they? They've already said so much and they still want to attack. Since that's the case, I'll have a taste of the 3 ancestors' strength. I, Hundan, will announce today that Hun Xion wants to overthrow the Soul Clan. I won't allow this to happen. Today, Hun Xion and the others must die. I'll kill anyone who stops me. As he spoke, Hundan kicked Hun Xion, who was severely injured, away. He planned to deal with him slowly later. Meanwhile, he stared at the 3 ancestors of the Soul Clan with murderous intent. Chapter 2181. Seeing Hundan being so stubborn, the 3 old ancestors were infuriated. Although Hundan was the #1 genius of the Soul Clan, the 3 of them were veteran Tao Lords. Even though Hundan was talented and intelligent, how could he be a match for them at such a young age? Moreover, there were 3 of them. No matter how talented Hundan was, he shouldn't be so arrogant. Bang! 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 The 3 ancestors were furious. They felt that Hundan was looking down on them. Therefore, they instantly raised their strength to the Tao Lord level. The increase in strength was not a big deal. However, all the Soul Clan cultivators in the square were suppressed by their terrifying aura. Most of them were pressed to the ground. It couldn't be helped. The aura was too terrifying. It wasn't something that low-level cultivators like them could resist. Even Murong Yu was almost pressed to the ground. If Elder Hun she hadn't protected him, he would have been pressed to the ground. However, Elder Hun she was only a Downlord. He couldn't resist the Downlords at all. As time went on, he would probably be pressed to the ground. Hun Dan, come up and fight. Let me teach you a lesson and let you know how to behave, one of the Downlords shouted coldly. At the same time, he had already soared into the sky. Stubborn old man. Hun Dan was furious as well. He soared into the sky. After they left the ground, their aura was still terrifying. However, it didn't affect the people on the ground much. However, they couldn't see the battle between the three of them clearly. Not to mention their vision, even their divine consciousness couldn't get close to them. After a while, bang, a figure was knocked down from the sky. Everyone's heart tightened. They were afraid that the person who was knocked down was Hun Dan. However, they heaved a sigh of relief when that person fell to the ground. That person was one of the three Downlords. Hun Dan was fighting against three Downlords, but he still defeated one of them. Such strength. Everyone was excited. Even Murong Yu was flabbergasted by this. Hun Dan's strength was so terrifying. Bang! Bang! After the first Downlord, the second and third Downlord were knocked down from the sky by Hun Dan. All of them were in a sorry state and fell deep into the ground. He was no match for Hun Dan at all. Hun Dan's strength was too terrifying. After defeating the three Downlords, Hun Dan descended slowly from a void. Three old fellows, how could you be so weak? Did you lose on purpose? Go and kill Hun Dan immediately. Otherwise, all of your descendants will die. None of them will be able to live. Hun Xin was on the verge of collapse. He angrily roared. An ancestor crawled up from the ground. He looked at Hun Xin angrily and said, "Bastard, Hun Dan is too powerful. We are no match for him. Even if you use our descendants to threaten him, we are no match for him." Everyone suddenly came to a realization. It turned out that the three Downlord-level old ancestors weren't colluding with each other. Instead, Hun Xin was using their descendants to threaten them. Due to the safety of their descendants, the three ancestors had no choice but to compromise. If you don't want to die, go and perish together with Hun Dan. Hun Xin was furious. His face was ferocious. They don't stand a chance. Hun Dan landed near the three great ancestors and sealed their powers. Now, it was impossible for them to perish together with Hun Dan. Hun Xion's face was extremely ugly. However, he suddenly burst out laughing and said, "Hun Dan, do you think you can stop me like this? Ha! I am destined to become a Downlord-level existence. The most powerful existence in the entire universe. None of you can stop me. As for Hun Dan and Murong Yu, you will be the first to bear the brunt. In the end, you will be killed by me." Murong Yu's body trembled. Wasn't he being implicated for no reason? What did this have to do with him? He wasn't the one who foiled their scheme. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. But then again, this matter really was because of Murong Yu. If it wasn't for Murong Yu, perhaps no one would have found out that Hun Xin had cultivated the Soul Clan's forbidden technique. However, if Hun Xin hadn't sent people to kill him, no matter how resourceful Murong Yu was, he wouldn't have found out. So in fact, Hun Xin had exposed himself. It didn't have anything to do with Murong Yu. At most, Murong Yu could only add fuel to the fire. Whoosh! Before his voice died away, Hun Xin suddenly jumped onto the spectator stand. Before an expert at the initial Tao realm could react, Hun Xin had already slapped him to death. At the same time, he extracted his soul. After extracting the opponent's soul, Hun Xin swallowed the soul. In the blink of an eye, Hun Xion's aura recovered a little. He could rely on swallowing souls to recover from his injuries. Moreover, Murong Yu vaguely felt that things weren't that simple. Bang! 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 Hun Xion attacked again and again. Those Soul Clan cultivators who were originally his subordinates were all slapped to death. Then their souls were all swallowed. After swallowing a few souls, Hun Xion's injuries were completely healed. After his injuries were healed, he didn't stop swallowing souls. He continued to do so. His aura was constantly increasing. Every time he swallowed a soul, his aura and strength would increase. Perhaps this was the terrifying part of the forbidden cultivation method. However, Moronu had some doubts. Even if the soul-devouring technique was powerful, it was quite heaven-defying, but it couldn't be heaven-defying to this extent, could it? If the souls Elder Hun Xian swallowed were stronger than his own, it would make sense for his cultivation level to increase. However, the souls he swallowed were weaker than him. Even if there was an increase, it would be very weak. How could it be so obvious? Could it be? Moronu suddenly thought of a terrifying cultivation method. At this moment, Elder Hun Xian was already sitting cross-legged on the ground. Thump, thump, thump. In the square, the Soul Clan cultivators were lying limp on the ground. There was no longer any life in them. As soul cultivators, everyone saw that the souls of these dead people were rushing towards Elder Hun Xian at lightning speed. In the end, they were all swallowed by Elder Hun Xian. Moreover, everyone also realized that these dead people were all Elder Hun Xian subordinates. This further confirmed Muronu's guess. A large number of Soul Clan cultivators had suddenly died, and their souls had been completely swallowed by Elder Hun Xian. Rumble. In a short period of a few breaths of time, Elder Hun Xian had broken through from the Dao Monarch realm to the Dao Lord realm. Moreover, he was still swallowing souls, and his cultivation was still rising swiftly. The bastard's face had turned green. It had only been a few breaths of time, and he wasn't able to stop it at all. When he finally reacted and intended to stop it, he noticed that he couldn't stop it at all. He couldn't stop Elder Hun Xian from swallowing their souls, and a large number of Soul Clan cultivators had suddenly died. Then, he could only kill Elder Hun Xian. So, Hun Dan attacked, and he directly charged towards Elder Hun Xian. Ha! Hun Dan, I'll show you how terrifying a forbidden cultivation method is. Hun Xian roared with laughter, but he didn't fight Hun Dan. He just teleported away. It seemed like he felt that he wasn't a match for Hun Dan right now, and he intended to grow stronger before annihilating Hun Dan. I'll charge into the peak of the Dao Lord realm once I've swallowed those people who've cultivated forbidden cultivation methods. When he spoke up to here, Elder Hun Xian's expression suddenly turned savage. But if it wasn't for all of you Hun Dan, then how could I have only broken through to the peak of the Dao Lord realm? So long as all of them attain the Dao Lord realm, then I'll be able to charge into the Dao Lord realm and become the strongest existence in the universe. Elder Hun Xian's words had finally confirmed Muronu's guess. He finally understood why someone at the selfless realm, or even a lower realm of cultivation, could cultivate that forbidden cultivation method. It wasn't that Hun Xian was very generous, and he'd done it on purpose. Cultivating forbidden cultivation methods was like raising a goo king. First, one had to raise a large number of ordinary goo and make them grow stronger and stronger. In the end, these goo would fight and devour each other to give birth to the strongest goo king. Amongst those who cultivated forbidden cultivation methods, Hun Xian was the goo king, whereas the others were just ordinary goo, and they were completely for Hun Xian to devour. The stronger they were, the greater Hun Xian's accomplishments would be after he devoured them. It wasn't just Moronu who'd come to an understanding, many others had as well. Especially those who'd cultivated forbidden cultivation methods. They'd been terrified out of their wits since a long time ago when they saw what happened to the others. So, all of them started fleeing towards the surroundings. However, they had nowhere to run at all. Everywhere Hun Xian passed, all those who'd cultivated forbidden cultivation methods fell to the ground and perished. On the other hand, their deaths allowed Hun Xian to grow stronger and stronger. Quickly stop Hun Xian and place all his subordinates into the spatial treasures. So long as Hun Xian is unable to devour their souls, then he won't be able to continue growing stronger. Right at this moment, Moronu suddenly shouted explosively. Only now did the others recover from their shock. So, all of them attacked and knocked out Hun Xian's subordinates before placing them into their spatial treasures. That way, Hun Exine wouldn't be able to devour their souls. Out of consideration for their own lives, Hun Exine's subordinates didn't run away at all. Instead, they walked in front of the others and knocked themselves out with a single slap, allowing the others to put them into the spatial treasures. "Little bastard, I'm going to kill you." Hun Exine was furious. With a loud roar, he immediately pounced towards Murongyu to kill him. Murongyu was so frightened that he let out a strange cry. His figure flashed and disappeared from where he'd been standing. As it turned out, he'd already hidden himself in Hichu Luo Shu. Now that the situation was critical, he could be killed if he wasn't careful. Murongyu didn't want to stay outside any longer. In Hichu Luo Shu, if Hun Exine was subdued, then he could come out. Otherwise, he'd directly teleport away from this troublesome place. Chapter 2182. At this moment, Hun Exine was a Tao Lord, and he was much stronger than Elder Hun Shi. Hun Exine's expression instantly changed when he saw Elder Hun Exine charge over with surging killing intent. Murongyu was watching all of this from within the Hichu Luo Shu. At this moment, the Hichu Luo Shu was attached to Elder Hun Shi. If Elder Hun Shi was unable to escape, then he could only teleport away. It was naturally impossible for Elder Hun Shi to be a match for Elder Hun Exine. However, as the #1 genius of the Hun clan, Hun Dan wasn't just for show. His figure flickered as he charged over. At this moment, Elder Hun Exine didn't want to fight Hun Dan directly. So, he turned around and left when he saw Hun Dan charge over. He continued to devour those Hun clan cultivators who'd cultivated taboo cultivation techniques. However, at this moment, most of the people who had cultivated the taboo cultivation technique had already been taken into the He-Tu and the Luo Shu. Even if Hun Exine possessed heaven-defying ability, there was no one's soul that he could devour. However, Hun Exine wasn't an idiot. The reason he hadn't devoured anyone was because they'd just been taken into the treasures, and they hadn't vanished. They were still with the other cultivators. So, Hun Exine immediately changed his target and started to kill the other cultivators. After killing these cultivators, Hun Exine devoured their souls. Moreover, he dragged out all the cultivators who'd cultivated taboo cultivation techniques from their treasures, and then he killed and devoured their souls. However, they were still unable to stop Hun Exine from devouring their souls. "Give me all the treasures. Run as far as you can." Hun Dan was furious and roared loudly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Hun Dan started to take the treasures. At the same time, the others cooperated with him and charged swiftly towards the distance. Fleeing for their lives was more important. However, Elder Hun Exine was still going on. Now, it depended on whether Hun Dan or Elder Hun Exine had more treasures. If Hun Dan had more treasures, then he could suppress Hun Exine's cultivation. On the other hand, if Elder Hun Exine had more treasures, then he could ceaselessly improve his cultivation until he reached the peak of the Tao Lord realm. After a round of competition, only Hun Dan and Hun Exine remained in the vicinity of Square. In the end, Hun Exine was still unable to advance to the peak of the Tao Lord realm. However, his cultivation wasn't inferior at all. The mid-rank Tao Lord realm. In Murongyu's opinion, Hun Exine was still inferior to Hun Dan. However, Murongyu also noticed that the evil force that had been completely suppressed lingered around Hun Dan once again. Although it was quite weak now, Hun Dan had to spend more energy to suppress this evil power. If this went on for a long time, Hun Dan might not be able to suppress the evil force and be completely invaded by it. At that time, Hun Dan would become a homicidal maniac who only knew how to kill. Moreover, the more aggressive the evil energy was, the weaker the power that Hun Dan could unleash would be. Therefore, Hun Dan needed to end the battle quickly and get rid of Elder Hun Exine first. "Hun Exine, let us fight to the death. Today either you die or I die." Hun Dan glared at Hun Exine coldly. His murderous aura sword, Elder Hun Xian sneered. You will be the only one who will die today. Die for me. While speaking, Hun Xian had already made the first move. He was engaged in a fierce battle with Hun Dan. It seemed like Hun Xian was utterly unaware of the unusual state that Hun Dan was in. Otherwise, he didn't have to fight Hun Dan at all. He just had to buy time, and once time passed, Hun Dan would naturally not be a match for him. However, both of them wanted to deal with each other as soon as possible. One naturally wanted to become king, while the other didn't want the Hun clan to be annihilated just like that. So, in an instant, the battle had entered into a state where it was daytime. The aftershock of the battle between two mid-ranked Dao Lords was rather terrifying. No one dared to approach them, so no one was able to see how they fought. Moreover, they didn't know who was stronger. Ancestors, when are all of you going to make a move against him? Could it be that all of you want the Hun clan to be annihilated by that bastard Hun Xian? Elder Hun, she arrived before the three ancestors that had been suppressed by that bastard earlier, and spoke in a low voice. The three of them exchanged glances, and then one of them said, "It isn't the time yet. Even if the three of us join forces, we might not be able to defeat Hun Xian. So, we must wait for an opportunity. We must wait for an opportunity to kill Hun Xian with a single strike." As he spoke, a wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed through the ancestor's eyes. Hichu Luoshu was surprised, but it didn't take long for him to recover from his shock. Those three old fellows weren't heavily injured at all. Obviously, those three old fellows had colluded with Hun Dan. Everything that had occurred just now was merely an act. After all, they were supreme ancestors of the Hun clan. Hun Xian had actually used their descendants to threaten them, and it made them extremely furious. However, they had some misgivings before this, so they hadn't resisted. But it was different now. Elder Hun, she was a smart person, and he immediately understood what was going on. All of you old bastards deserve to be threatened by Hun Xian. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't defeat all of you, I would have slapped all of you to death with a single slap. All of you are still so timid even now. What trash! Elder Hun, she suddenly started cursing at them. The three ancestors were stunned, and then they recovered from their shock. But even then, their expressions were still quite unsightly. After all, it was a loss of face for all of them to be cursed at by a junior. All of you are old foxes. Murong-yu rolled his eyes within the Hichu Luoshu. There was only a single reason why Elder Hun, she had suddenly cursed, and it was to numb Hun Xian. In this way, Hun Xian would be caught off guard when the three ancestors suddenly attacked. Elder Hun, she retreated swiftly after he finished roaring. He was an old fox as well, and he knew that a battle between Dao Lords wasn't something that he could interfere in. Otherwise, only death would await him. Just like that, another 2 hours passed. Murong-yu was constantly observing the three ancestors of the Han clan. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that they'd suddenly soared into the sky. The three ancestors had joined the battle. Presumably, the battle was about to come to an end. As expected, all of you old bastards, all of you will definitely die. Hun Xian's furious roar resounded from the sky. Even if the three ancestors had launched a surprise attack, they were still unable to kill Hun Xian in one go. This clearly showed how formidable Hun Xian's strength was. Kill! The three ancestors roared furiously in unison, and they cooperated with Hun Dan to launch a frenzied attack. Originally, Hun Xian had already been heavily injured by the surprise attack of the three ancestors. At this moment, the joint forces of the four of them had completely vanished. They were utterly powerless to resist, and they were successively defeated. In the end, Hun Xian blasted Hun Dan and the others back with a single punch, and then he directly smashed through space and transformed into a ray of light that flashed towards the distance. However, he hadn't fled very far when Murong-yu and the others heard an enormous bang resound. After that, a strand of terrifying force suddenly descended from the sky and smashed forcefully onto Hun Xian, who was caught off guard. Hun Xian let out a miserable and shrill cry, and then he was like a kite that had its string cut, and he fell down towards the ground. It was very obvious that Elder Hun Xian's aura had become even weaker. Hun Dan, you're really something? You actually even seized control of the Grand Formation. Hun Xian roared furiously with dissatisfaction. Murong Yu instantly came to a sudden understanding when he heard this. At this moment, he finally understood why Hun Dan wanted him to stall for time earlier. It turned out that this fellow knew that the Soul Clan's Grand Formation had been controlled by Hun Xian after he entered the Soul Clan's territory. Therefore, he needed to invade the Grand Formation first and seize control of the Grand Formation. Otherwise, Hun Xian would have already escaped this time. If Hun Xian had escaped from the Soul Clan's territory, the universe was so big. Where could they find him? With Hun Xian's strength, as long as he was given enough time, he could definitely advance to the peak of the Downlord realm, and he might even break through to the Downlord realm. Therefore, Hun Dan had to kill him. At this moment, Hun Dan finally stepped down slowly from the sky. However, Murong Yu realized that although he wasn't injured, the evil energy within the Grand Formation had already spread. However, the evil energy emitted from his body was getting denser and denser. If this continued, it wouldn't take long for Hun Dan to be unable to continue suppressing the evil energy. Therefore, Hun Dan didn't say anything, and he just pressed towards Hun Xian. The battle was nearing its end. Murong Yu walked out from the Hichu Luo Shu. He believed that Hun Xian, who was severely injured and didn't have much strength left, was no match for Hun Dan and the others. As expected, Hun Xian basically didn't have the strength to fight back. After suffering a few attacks from Hun Dan, he was not far from death. There's one thing that I still don't understand. How did you find out that I've cultivated a forbidden technique? I'm confident that I've done it perfectly. Looking at Hun Dan and the others, Hun Xian said with a bitter smile, and his face was full of despair. Murong Yu's body trembled, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. As expected, the moment he had this feeling, he saw Hun Dan pointing at him. Murong Yu knew that Hun Dan wanted to take this opportunity to elevate his position in the Soul Clan. However, Murong Yu only wanted to make a fortune in silence. Moreover, he still felt that something was wrong. It's you? Elder Hun Xian looked at Murong Yu, and his face was full of surprise and weirdness. The bad feeling in Murong Yu's heart grew stronger and stronger. With a thought, he was about to enter the Hichu Luo Shu again. However, it was too late. Even if I die, you must die. Hun Xian roared. Then, Murong Yu's heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Murong Yu was shocked, and he wanted to rush into the Hichu Luo Shu. However, at this moment, he suddenly noticed that there was another soul in his soul space. It was Elder Hun Xian's soul. As a soul cultivator, even though he was heavily injured, Hun Xian was still a Downlord. How could a mere peak Genesis realm cultivator like Murong Yu resist him? I'm dead. Murong Yu roared in despair. Chapter 2183. Even if I die, you must die first. Hun Xian's entire soul had entered Murong Yu's soul space. At this moment, he was roaring in Murong Yu's soul space. Hun Xian's physical body had gone soft and collapsed. Without a soul, it was useless no matter how strong his physical body was. It was over. Hun Dan's expression changed. He didn't want to use this opportunity to elevate Murong Yu's status in the Soul Tribe. After all, he was the biggest contributor to this. However, he did not expect that his finger would kill him. Hun Dan's expression changed, and he rushed to Murong Yu's side. However, he did not dare to make any move. It was obvious that Murong Yu and Hun Xian were fighting in Murong Yu's soul space. In fact, there was no fighting in Murong Yu's soul space. Elder Hun Xian roared angrily after he entered Murong Yu's soul space. Then he stopped. Murong Yu realized that he was looking at his 3 soul balls, which had reached perfection in shock. 3 soul spheres? You actually have 3 soul spheres? You are from the chaotic tribe? Isn't the chaotic tribe extinct? Why are there more? Hun Xin said in shock. Why is there another chaotic tribe? Morongyu was confused. He did not know what Hun Xin was talking about. Moreover, he had always been a human. How did he become a chaotic tribe? What kind of tribe was the chaotic tribe? Haha, you are from the chaotic tribe, the noblest tribe in the universe? Haha, if I could devour your soul, wouldn't I turn into a member of the chaos tribe? By then, so what if the soul tribe is powerful? Won't you become my slave obediently? Hun Xin laughed like a madman. Morongyu looked at Hun Xin as if he was looking at an idiot. In fact, he was thinking of a way to destroy Hun Xion's soul. However, the disparity in power between them was too great. No matter how many ways he had, none of them would work. As he laughed, Hun Xion's entire soul attacked Morongyu's soul. He wanted to devour Morongyu's soul. It's over. Morongyu was helpless. He couldn't fight against Hun Xion at all. Hun Xion sneered. He was already near Morongyu's soul. He opened his mouth and was about to devour Morongyu's soul. Just as Morongyu was in despair, a sudden change occurred. Wang, his soul, which had been motionless, suddenly began to tremble violently. Following that, a dazzling purple light erupted from his soul, instantly enveloping the entire soul space. It even dissipated out of the soul space and soared into the sky. Plop! Just as the purple light was released from Morongyu's soul, the purple light disappeared. Regardless of their strength, all the Soul Clan cultivators in the Soul Clan's territory felt a strong pressure pressing down on them. This was the aura of a superior being. Most of the Soul Clan cultivators knelt on the ground involuntarily before they could react. This was the natural reaction of an inferior being when they saw a superior being. They couldn't resist at all and immediately submitted to him. Even someone as strong as Hun Dan and the three ancestors of the Soul Clan almost knelt down. Fortunately, the purple light emitted from Morongyu's soul disappeared in a flash. Even though Hun Dan and the others were right next to Morongyu, they didn't know that the aura that made them submit to him involuntarily came from him. Otherwise, how could they tolerate Morongyu? Would they kill Morongyu? After all, no one was willing to submit to another. Moreover, Morongyu could make the entire Soul Clan submit to him. They couldn't resist at all. Hun Dan and the others were already in such a state, let alone Hun Xin, who bore the brunt of it. The moment the purple light exploded, Morongyu saw that Hun Xin was blasted into pieces and shattered into pieces. In the end, these pieces all entered Morongyu's soul and became a part of Morongyu's soul. Naturally, Hun Xion's memories became Morongyu's memories. During this process, Hun Xin didn't even have time to show a surprised expression before he was blasted into pieces. He was dumbfounded. Morongyu didn't know the situation of the entire Soul Clan. However, Elder Hun Xion's transformation was enough to shock and confuse him. What was that purple light? He didn't feel any strong killing power from the purple light at all. However, Hun Xion was blasted into pieces just like that. Nothing was left. Could it be that this was the latest battle skill that his soul had automatically comprehended? Or was this the ultimate skill of the chaotic clan? However, was it effective against the soul that invaded his soul space? Or was it effective against other souls? All kind of questions. However, he had managed to keep his life, and Hun Xion had been killed. This was a good thing. He slowly opened his eyes and saw Hun Dan's concerned face. He then grinned. I'm fine. Hun Xion was severely injured and died before he could unleash his power when he entered my soul space. However, it's a pity that his soul was shattered too. Morongyu didn't want to tell anyone about the purple light. He wasn't an idiot. Moreover, Hun Xion's memories contained many secrets. The three ancestors of the Soul Clan didn't want Morongyu to see them. Therefore, he could only make up this story. After all, there was no evidence now. He could say whatever he wanted. As long as you're fine. Hun Dan heaved a sigh of relief. If his actions had caused Morongyu's death, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. All right, the crisis of the Soul Clan has been resolved. We should go. Hun Dan was obviously unable to suppress the evil power any longer. Therefore, he suggested that they should leave. Murong is our hero. How can he leave just like that? I suggest that Murong stay in the Soul Clan for a while. Let's take good care of him. One of the three ancestors said with a smile. However, before he could finish speaking, Murong, Hun Dan, and Hun Shi's faces darkened. Hun Shi was only a Dao Lord. He couldn't do anything. However, Hun Dan said directly, "What do you mean?" Murong said that Hun Xian's soul has been shattered. He can't get Hun Xian's memories. You just want to put him under house arrest? Murong looked at the ancestor of the Soul Clan with fire in his eyes. Although he didn't say anything about that, he was implying that he wanted to put Murong under house arrest. Hun Dan, how can you say that? We definitely don't want to do that. Don't worry. The three ancestors' faces changed slightly. They looked at each other first. Then another ancestor said in a deep voice. Hun Dan's face darkened even more. His eyes flashed with a terrifying cold light. He couldn't understand. Murong was the greatest hero. Without him, the Soul Clan would have been wiped out. Didn't these people have any gratitude? How could they burn the bridge after crossing it and kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness? What if I insist on taking Murong away? Hun Dan suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a deep voice. Murong looked deeply at the three ancestors of the Soul Clan. Suddenly, he grinned and said, Hun Dan, forget it. I'll stay in the Soul Clan. I'm sure it's safe here, right? Three ancestors? We have to ensure your safety. Don't worry. This is the safest place in the entire universe. Even if the sect master wants to kill you, he won't be able to, one of the ancestors said with a smile. Hun Dan was surprised. He didn't know why Murong wanted to stay when he knew that the three ancestors were up to no good. Hun Dan, you should leave first. Otherwise, you won't be able to suppress the evil force. As for me, the three ancestors won't dare to do anything to me. You can take me away after you've suppressed the evil force, Murong said through voice transmission. Hun Dan finally knew what Murong was thinking. Therefore, he nodded and said, I'll leave first. After I return, I don't want to see Murong get hurt. Otherwise, no matter who the other party is, I won't show mercy. All of you know my character. In the end, the soul puppet left without looking back after spitting out these cold words. Murong knew that Hun Dan could only suppress the evil force in his body on that unique planet. Otherwise, why would he run to that remote place? Why would he stay on that small planet? After Hun Dan left, the three ancestors ordered Hun Shi, arrange a good place for Murong. He's our hero. Don't neglect him. Then, the three of them left. Hun Shi was a little angry. However, he couldn't get a word in edgewise. In the end, he arranged for Murong to stay near his palace. This way, he could take care of Murong immediately. However, after the arrangements were made, there were people outside monitoring every movement. It was obvious that this was an order from the three ancestors. Murong didn't have any objections to this. These people didn't know about Hichu Luoshu's secret. Did they think that by imprisoning him here, he wouldn't be able to leave the Soul Tribe's territory? As long as he wanted to, he could leave at any time. As for the three ancestors of the Soul Tribe who wanted to burn the bridge after crossing the river and kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness, they would be in for it in the future. Murong's heart was already filled with killing intent towards the three ancestors. However, there were Downward Realm experts in the end, and they weren't existences that Murong could go against right now. If he wanted to kill them, then he had to possess a combat strength at the Downward Realm. So, he charged into Hichu Luoshu at the first possible moment after Hun Shi arranged a place for him to stay. He devoured Hun Xian's soul because of the violet light. Hun Xian was a Dao Lord, so even if he'd been heavily injured, but the soul energy contained within his soul was still rather terrifying. After he devoured Hun Xian's soul, Murong's soul, which was at the peak of the creation realm, was about to break through on the spot. However, he'd suppressed it. However, he was unable to suppress it in the end. He was about to break through. However, the soul territory wasn't a good place to break through, and only Hichu Luoshu was the safest place. Chapter 2184. Bang! Hun Xian's soul was too powerful, and the soul energy it contained was extremely terrifying. The instant Murongyu entered the Hichu Luoshu, his soul broke through uncontrollably and broke through to the first level of the heaven realm. Moreover, Hun Xian's soul wasn't just powerful in terms of soul energy, but in other aspects as well. So, after breaking through Murongyu's soul realm, his cultivation and body broke through successively as well, and they both broke through to the first level of the heaven realm. However, this was just the beginning. Under the impact of the terrifying energy, Murongyu's soul, cultivation, and body broke through successively, and he charged to the third level of the heaven realm in one go. Of course, if Murongyu was willing, Hun Xian's soul could even push his cultivation to the peak of the heaven realm, and he could even charge into the true self realm without any pressure. However, Hun Xian had forcefully suppressed it. Even though breaking through with the help of external forces was quick, it didn't mean that the higher one rose, the better it was. Moderation. The third level of the heaven realm was more suitable for Murongyu. Of course, Hun Xian's soul energy didn't vanish after it was suppressed. Instead, it existed in his soul, cultivation, and body. In the future, this energy would be released slowly, and it would allow Murongyu to achieve twice the result with half the effort in his cultivation. When he was at the peak of the creation realm, Murongyu's combat strength had already reached the peak of the true self realm. At this moment, after breaking through successively, his combat strength had taken a huge leap forward as well. The third level of the selfless realm, and this was only his current combat strength. After all, after breaking through, Murongyu's soul and strength could fuse with even more vortexes. The more vortexes there were, the more terrifying his lethality would be. At that time, his combat strength might directly approach the fourth level of the selfless realm, and it might even surpass the fourth level to reach the fifth or sixth level. Most importantly, Hun Xian's powerful soul at the Downlord realm was endlessly transmitting energy to him. It wouldn't be long before Murongyu broke through to the true self realm. Once he broke through to the true self realm, then he would possess the terrifying combat strength of the initial Dao realm. At that time, even if he wouldn't be able to attain the Downlord realm or Downlord realm, he would at least be a Grand Dao realm expert. In front of a great Dao realm cultivator, he had the right to speak. After checking his soul space, Murongyu discovered that the fourth soul sphere had already been condensed. Others can only condense a single soul sphere, and it's the same even for Dao Lords. Could it be that condensing multiple soul balls was the mark of the chaotic race? What is the limit of the soul orb? Murongyu could not help but recall Hun Xian's words before he died. He had been curious about Hun Xian's words for a long time. It was just that he didn't have the time to read Hun Xian's memories. Even though Hun Xian had been completely killed by the purple light, he still didn't have the time to do so. However, his memories had already fused with Murongyu's memories. It was just that Murongyu didn't have the time to check. Now that his cultivation had come to an end, he had time to look through Hun Xian's memories. With a thought, he gathered Hun Xian's memories. After removing some unimportant memories, the things that Murongyu wanted to know appeared in front of him. According to legend, the chaotic race was the strongest race in the universe. Even though there were very few members of the chaotic race, and there were no more than 10,000 of them at their peak. However, the combat strength of every single member of the chaotic race was rather terrifying. No one at the same realm of cultivation was a match for the chaotic race. When the chaotic race still existed, they were the masters of the universe, and they firmly controlled everything in the universe. No one could shake their position. Just 10,000 of them can control the entire universe. Even powerful powers that are numerous, like the grains of sand in the Ganges, can only lower their heads before the chaotic race. Murongyu's eyes flickered with traces of bright light, and he was extremely shocked. At the same time, he sensed how strong the chaotic race was. The weakest amongst them was at the initial Tao realm, and most of them were at the Tao Lord realm. The strongest amongst them were the strongest existences in the universe at the Tao Lord realm. The Tao Lord realm? Murongyu's heart shook. The chaotic race once had a Tao Lord realm expert. Could it be that he was the legendary Chaos Controller? If that was the case, it was normal for the chaotic race to become the strongest force in the universe. However, how could a Tao Lord realm expert fall? The Chaos Controller could already control the endless chaos and had the same lifespan as the chaos. How could he fall? As for being killed, that was even more impossible. In the universe, who could be a match for the Chaos Controller? Could it be that the Tao Lord realm was not the legendary Chaos Controller? Was the Chaos Controller above the Tao Lord realm? All sorts of doubts flashed through Murongyu's mind, and he continued to read on. There were very few members of the chaotic race, even though they were the strongest race in the world. However, most people really did not know about the existence of the chaotic race. This was because the chaotic race had two representatives in the universe, the Soul Race and the Great Void Race. The Great Void Race? Murongyu's eyes flashed with confusion because he had never heard of the Great Void Race. However, he soon felt relieved. Before this, he had never heard of the Soul Race. Okay. The chaotic race never appeared. Everything was handled by the Soul Race and the Great Void Race. Therefore, the world only knew that the Soul Race and the Great Void Race were very powerful. Some powerful people knew that these two races were the representatives of the chaotic race. However, only a few people knew that these two races were not the representatives of the chaotic race, but the slaves of the chaotic race. Hiss, Murong, you couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. He did not know much about the Great Void Race. However, he knew quite a bit about the Soul Race. That was an extremely terrifying and powerful race. Although only 3 Tao Lords had appeared in the Soul Race when they were in chaos. However, Murongy knew that the Soul Race did not only have 3 Tao Lords. Apart from the Tao Lords, there were also quite a number of Tao Lords and Tao Lords. Although there were only 3 territories in the original Soul Race territory. However, their combat strength was definitely stronger than the human race and even the demon race. If the Soul Race was like this, then the Great Void Race, which was also one of the slave races of the chaotic race, would at least be at the same level as the Soul Race. If the two slave races were so powerful, one could imagine how terrifying the chaotic race was. However, the chaotic race was so powerful. How did they decline and even get wiped out? Murongy continued to look through Hun Xian's memories. However, unfortunately, Hun Xian did not know about the fall of the chaotic race. He only knew that the master of the Soul Race had suddenly vanished overnight. Everything was gone, but the people had changed. In the beginning, the Soul Race did not know that the chaotic race had been wiped out. However, they did not receive any orders from the chaotic race for a long time. After a long time had passed, they were finally sure that something had happened to the chaotic race. The Soul Race, who had been under the chaotic race for a long time, was naturally very excited and immediately became independent. From then on, they were no longer slaves of the chaotic race. After becoming independent, the Soul Race had never investigated why the chaotic race had disappeared. Murongyu's expression was slightly gloomy. These Soul Race are really bastards. They did nothing. You have to know that everything they have was given to them by the chaotic race. For some reason, Murongy was suddenly furious. The Soul Race was originally a small race. However, they had become one of the top races in the universe with the help of the chaotic race. However, the Soul Race did not show any gratitude. They were simply ingrates. This was why Murongy was furious. From Hun Xian's memory, Murongy knew every member of the chaotic race was a soul cultivator. At the same time, they also cultivated their physical body and ordinary cultivation. Their combined strength was not something that the Soul Race could compare with. Moreover, every member of the chaotic race could cultivate multiple soul balls. The more soul balls, the greater their potential and the greater their future achievements. The characteristics of the chaotic race were exactly the same as Murong-Yu's. Could it be that I'm really a member of the chaotic race? Murong-Yu started to have doubts in his heart. However, he was not even one reincarnation cycle old. However, the chaotic race had been wiped out one reincarnation cycle ago. Then, he could not possibly be a member of the chaotic race. However, if he was not a member of the chaotic race, then why did he have the characteristics of the chaotic race? Soul Devourer Great? This is a technique that the chaotic race must cultivate. The purpose is to control, frighten, and even devour the soul race. Murong-Yu suddenly saw the introduction of the soul race's forbidden technique. Soul Devouring Technique? One of the functions of this technique was to devour souls. Just like how Hun Xin devoured other members of the soul race who cultivated the forbidden technique. However, when they were in the chaotic race, every member of the soul race had to cultivate this technique. However, the soul race could not devour other people's souls. Only the chaotic race who also cultivated the forbidden technique could do so. However, from Hun Xin's memory, the chaotic race rarely relied on devouring the souls of the soul race to continuously increase their strength. Only those who committed a capital crime would have their souls devoured by the chaotic race. Usually, this technique was only used to frighten and control the soul race. After the chaotic race was wiped out, the soul race completely destroyed this technique, although it would cause the person involved to be severely injured. After all, they were no longer controlled by others. Moreover, this technique was sealed up by the soul race. Later, Hun Xin thought of a way to get his hands on it. In the end, the soul race was almost wiped out. Since the chaotic race has a technique to frighten the soul race, they should also have a technique to frighten the void race. If that's the case, wouldn't I be able to frighten the soul race by cultivating the forbidden technique? That's not right. Now, basically no one in the soul race cultivates the forbidden technique. They're not controlled at all. Moreover, if they know that I cultivate the forbidden technique, I'm afraid I'll be targeted by all. Murong-Yu thought in his heart. However, he could not help but check on Soul Devouring Technique. Soul Devouring Technique was here. There were simply too many similarities between him and the Primal Chaos race. Murong-Yu always felt that he had some sort of connection with them. Perhaps he was really the orphan of the chaotic race? Even if he was not, he must have some connection with the chaotic race. If the soul race and the void race knew about it, he would have two more terrifying enemies out of nowhere. Chapter 2185. Why did such a powerful race like the chaotic race suddenly go extinct? Since the soul race had appeared, then what about the chaotic race's token, the Great Void Race? Was he a member of the chaotic race? Many questions surged in Murong-Yu's mind, but these questions were unanswered for the time being. Murong-Yu naturally wouldn't waste his time trying to figure out something he couldn't solve. Therefore, he decided to cultivate Soul Devouring Great Law. The Soul Devouring Great technique didn't look complicated. Although this was a taboo-level technique, it was only a technique used by the chaotic race to control the soul race. If the entire soul race wanted to successfully cultivate it, then the technique couldn't be too profound. Otherwise, many soul race people wouldn't be able to cultivate it. Therefore, Soul Devouring Great, for someone of Murong-Yu's level of comprehension, law was actually quite simple. After reading it once, Murong-Yu had already comprehended it. After reading it a few more times, Murong-Yu had completely comprehended it. After comprehending it, it was naturally time to cultivate it. After cultivating it, Murong-Yu was surprised to find that this technique seemed to be tailor-made for him and was very suitable for him. Moreover, his cultivation had the effect of getting twice the result with half the effort. This confirmed Murong-Yu's guess. Even if he's not a member of the chaotic race, he has a great relationship with them. Didn't they say that Murong-Yu could only cultivate the chaotic celestial records? Why could he cultivate Soul Devouring Great Law? This was indeed the case, but soul-devouring great? Strictly speaking, law wasn't a cultivation technique, but a battle skill. Even if it was a cultivation technique, it wasn't the main cultivation technique. After successfully cultivating it, it only increased Murong Yu's strength, but it couldn't directly increase Murong Yu's cultivation and realm. At best, it was just a supplementary cultivation method. One day, in just a single day, Murong Yu had already succeeded in cultivating it. However, after successfully cultivating it, Murong Yu didn't change much. However, at this moment, his originally transparent and colorless soul and the 4 soul balls were emitting a faint purple light. The faint purple light enveloped Murong Yu's entire soul, and even Murong Yu's main soul in his soul space. It looked extremely noble. What exactly was the purple light? Murong Yu was puzzled. This was because he could clearly sense that although the purple light did not seem to have any effect, it was actually quite powerful. However, the depths of the purple light contained an extremely terrifying power. This was clearly the purple light that had blasted Hun Xin into smithereens. However, when Murong Yu tried, he was unable to use the purple light. However, when he attacked, his soul power carried traces of soul light. However, Murong Yu didn't know for the time being whether or not it had increased his spiritual power. Time acceleration. Murong Yu did not return to the soul race. Instead, he activated Hichu Luoshu's time acceleration function. With a breakthrough in his realm, Murong Yu's combat power had increased by a lot. However, Murong Yu wanted to reach a higher level. Of course, he didn't want to continue increasing his realm. Instead, he wanted to increase his power and soul vortex. The more vortexes he fused with his soul power, the more terrifying his combat power would be. This was the only way to increase one's combat strength without increasing one's realm. Time passed quickly. Murong Yu continued to fuse his power and soul vortexes. Due to the support of Hun Xion's enormous soul, Murong Yu had successfully fused 10,000 soul vortexes in just one era. A total of 10,000 soul vortexes. Originally, his soul realm had only reached the 3rd level of the sky, human realm. However, after fusing 10,000 soul vortexes, his soul's lethality had increased tremendously, reaching the level of selfless realm. This was quite terrifying. One should know that the soul race was stronger than the average cultivator. However, their combat power was only 1 or 2 realms higher than the average cultivator. The more heaven-defying ones were only 3 or 4 realms higher. For example, the soul race's number 1 genius, Huning, could only surpass 1 major realm. However, what if both sides were soul race members? This kind of advantage was almost non-existent. At the same realm, the soul race cultivator's combat power was almost the same. However, Murong Yu was quite heaven-defying. He was only at the 3rd level of the sky, human realm, but he was already comparable to a selfless realm soul race cultivator. With this combat power, even if he encountered a mid-level selfless realm, or even a high-level non-soul race expert, he still had the power to kill them. Moreover, this was only his soul's combat power. If combined with his cultivation and physical body, his combat power would be even more terrifying. Even if he wasn't invincible under the Great Tao realm, he wouldn't be far off. If his power could also fuse 10,000 vortexes, reaching the combat power of the initial Tao realm would definitely not be a problem. After an era, Murong Yu only managed to fuse 10,000 soul vortexes. This was also due to Hun Xion's powerful soul. However, relying on his tenacious willpower, Murong Yu only used half an era's time to already fuse 10,000 energy vortexes. After all, compared to the soul, although fusing soul vortexes also had a certain degree of danger, compared to the danger of fusing soul vortexes, it was completely not worth mentioning. In fact, as long as it was guaranteed that his physical body would not be completely destroyed, Murong Yu could fuse as much as he wanted the combat power of the initial Tao realm. After fusing 10,000 soul vortexes and cultivation power, Murong Yu felt that his combat power had already reached the initial Tao realm. The sky human realm had the combat power of the initial Dao realm, a full 3 major realms difference. This horror was probably the most heaven-defying existence in history, right? At least, Murong did not see an existence more heaven-defying than him in Hun Exine's memories. In reality, having combat power that surpassed one's own by a major realm was already quite heaven-defying. This combat power was more suitable for pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Murong chuckled, feeling quite satisfied. Therefore, after cultivating some other combat skills, he left the Hichu Luo Shu. 1.5 years had passed in the Hichu Luo Shu, but only 1.5 years had passed in the outside world. After Murong came out, he still saw that there were Soul Tribe cultivators outside, monitoring him. Immediately, he could not help but laugh coldly. As long as he reached the peak of the Selfless Realm, he could suppress the 3 Soul Tribe ancestors. He had saved the entire Soul Tribe, but those 3 ingrates had turned their backs on him. This already made Murong want to kill them. If he had the strength, he did not rule out the possibility of killing them. Moreover, the Soul Tribe was originally the slaves of the Chaotic Tribe. They could only submit. What right did they have to control him? This thought suddenly flashed through Murong mind, and then he was shocked. Since when did he consider himself a member of the Chaotic Tribe? This was not good. Could it be that he had cultivated the Great Soul Devourer? Relationship with the law. Murong narrowed his eyes slightly. Brother Murong. At this moment, Hunming's voice came from outside the manor. Then, Hunming walked quickly to Murong. Swoosh. However, the moment Hunming saw Murong, his face turned pale, and there was fear in the depths of his eyes. It was as if there was something about Murong that made him afraid. Murong was the first to notice Hunming's abnormality. However, he didn't notice anything different about himself. Hunming, what's wrong? Murong could not help but take a step forward. Thud, thud, thud. Murong only took a step forward, but Hunming took a few steps back. At the same time, he said in a panic, Brother Murong, don't come over. Murong was puzzled, but he still paused in the end. Hunming took a deep breath and tried his best to convince himself. After a while, he looked at Murong and said with a frightened expression, Big Brother Murong, I don't know why, but when I see you, or even when I'm just standing near you, I feel a huge pressure. Murong's face was filled with shock. This pressure comes from the soul. Your body seems to be emitting a terrifying aura that can suppress my soul. Under this aura, my soul even has a feeling of wanting to submit. Hunming slowly explained the reason for this change. Murong was shocked. Hunming continued. This feeling is similar to what happened a year ago. At that time, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted, and almost all of us from the Soul Tribe fell to our knees. He was like a superior, and I didn't even have the heart to resist. I could only submit to him. When he said this, Hunming couldn't help but show a look of fear. Murong found it very strange. He didn't know that he was the one who caused that, so he asked. Hunming knew that Murong was in a life-and-death situation at the time, so he didn't know about this. So he explained in detail. Purple light. It's because of that mysterious purple light. That purple light didn't just destroy Hun Exine's soul, it also suppressed most of the Soul Tribe cultivators. Now that Soul Cry had such a reaction, it should be because of the purple light emitted from his soul. Murong couldn't help but think of a part of Hun Exine's memory. When the Soul Tribe was still the slaves of the primal chaos, no matter what realm the Soul Tribe cultivators were at, when they saw the primal chaos, no matter how weak they were, they would naturally emit an aura that suppressed the souls of the Soul Tribe cultivators. The aura of a superior being. It was innate. When he thought of this, Murong's face turned gloomy. If Hun Exine knew this, then the old Soul Tribe cultivators must know as well. If they connected him to the fact that he was a member of the primal chaos, wouldn't they immediately kill him? I have to think of a way to restrain that purple light. Murong thought to himself, already trying to restrain the purple light. Whoosh! Just as Murong was about to restrain the purple light, Hunming felt the pressure on his body loosen. The enormous pressure that was suppressing his body instantly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the purple light from Murong Yu's soul was still there, but it didn't have the power to suppress the soul tribe cultivators. He'd already retracted it. Chapter 2186. Murong Yu immediately noticed this change, and he couldn't help but feel delighted. If he suddenly released the aura of a superior when fighting against a member of the Hun race, then wouldn't he be able to suppress his opponent until they lost their minds? Moreover, even the slightest mistake during a battle could turn the tide of the battle. Moreover, Murong Yu's aura could even suppress a Dao Lord. To a Hun race cultivator, it was definitely much more effective than the Heavenly King Grand Sage art. Han Ming heaved a sigh of relief, but he still looked at Murong Yu with lingering fear in his eyes. He really couldn't figure out why Murong Yu had such an aura that made him feel uneasy. Before Murong Yu, he was like Murong Yu's servant. "Little Ming, I hope you can keep this a secret. Don't tell anyone," Murong Yu said solemnly to Murong Yu. If this matter were spread, it would definitely shock the entire Han race, and it was very likely that Murong Yu would be killed because of it. Han Ming knew how terrifying this matter was, so he nodded fiercely. "Right, Han Ming, why are you here?" Murong Yu couldn't help but ask. In the beginning, Han Ming seemed to have come looking for him for something. However, after that incident, Han Ming seemed to have forgotten his purpose for coming here. "Right, my father told me to come look for you. He said that the three ancestors want to see you, and it seems like they won't let you go." Han Ming slapped his head and reacted. A cold light flashed through Murong Yu's eyes. He didn't think like Han Ming. If they let him go so easily, then he wouldn't be an ungrateful person. Moreover, he had a feeling that the three ancestors of the Han race were going to attack him. How should he deal with this? If they saw his 4 soul balls, they might just kill him. Should he just leave? If Murong Yu wanted to leave, he could teleport away directly. No one could stop him. However, if that was the case, Murong Yu couldn't guarantee that the 3 crazy ancestors of the soul race wouldn't attack Shenzhen and destroy Shenzhen. Even though Shenzhen now had 61 great Dao Realm experts, including him, Luo Yunyang was still a great Dao Realm expert. However, the strongest of them were only Dao Lords. They weren't a match for the Spiritas at all. In fact, they could not even withstand a single blow. Murong Yu couldn't help but feel a little depressed. There was strength in numbers, but sometimes having a big family was a burden. If it was just him alone, he could do whatever he wanted without any worries at all. Let's go see what those 3 ingrates are up to. Murong Yu left the manor with Soul Cry. After he left the manor, the Soul Clan experts hiding outside the manor and monitoring Murong Yu began to move as well. They were all selfless realm cultivators. These people were the lackeys of the 3 patriarchs. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. If this was any other place, he might have wiped them all out with one 10,000-layered soul wave. At this moment, Murong Yu's 10,000-layered soul waves could already unleash 3,000-layered attacks. With Murong Yu's selfless realm soul attack, it could deal 3,000 layers of damage. How could these selfless realm cultivators block it? Soul Cry seemed to think that Murong Yu was about to regain his freedom, so he was very excited along the way. Seeing this, Murong Yu didn't want to ruin his mood. He didn't want to hurt this innocent child. In the end, Soul Cry brought Murong Yu to a large hall and stopped. The 3 ancestors of the soul race should be inside. Murong Yu didn't hesitate. He pushed open the door and walked in. Whoosh! As soon as he opened the door, 4 extremely powerful gazes shot onto him. At this moment, all the hairs on Murong Yu's body stood on end. The strength of these 4 people was too terrifying. Just a glance at him made him feel as if he was facing a great enemy, and he even felt suffocated. They should be the 3 Dao Lord realm ancestors of the soul race. But why is there one more person? Murong Yu looked over fearlessly. He noticed that there were 4 people sitting in the hall. Besides the 3 ancestors, there was another old man who emanated a similarly powerful aura that was on par with the other 3. This person should be one of the Dao Lord realm ancestors of the soul race, right? Murong Yu pondered in his heart as he stepped forward. Murong Yu greets the 4 ancestors. Murong cupped his fists and said to the four ancestors. However, there was no respect on his face at all. These are ingrates. Murong wished for nothing more than to beat them to death with a single punch. So why did he attack them? Murong couldn't even be bothered to put on an act when facing people he disliked. You're Murong? The Murong who devoured Hun Xian's soul? Murong hadn't finished speaking when the ancestor of the soul race that he'd met for the first time spoke coldly. Murong was furious. Do you think that I can devour Hun Xian's soul with my current cultivation? Why don't you find a creation realm cultivator? Try devouring Hun Xian's soul. The expressions of the four ancestors turned slightly gloomy when they heard this. It was even to the extent that Murong sensed a wisp of ghastly killing intent flash through the depths of the eyes of the ancestor who'd questioned him. They aroused killing intent towards me? This really is a trap. The flames of rage in Murong's heart surged, and he was practically on the verge of slamming the door and leaving. However, would he be able to escape from under their noses? The answer was naturally no. He couldn't escape at all right? In that case, he could only take things one step at a time. He'd deal with whatever came his way. That's not impossible. Hun Xian's soul was already severely injured at the time. The power that it contained was probably less than 1/10,000th of its peak power. With your abilities, you could have completely devoured his soul, another ancestor said in a low voice at this moment. The flames of rage in Murong's heart surged. However, he didn't say anything. He merely looked coldly at these four ingrates. Murong, you're a great contributor to our soul race. We're not treating you unfairly. However, as an elder of our soul race, Hun Xian's memories contain many of our soul race's memories. There are some memories that you can't know at your current cultivation level. Furthermore, if you're traveling outside and someone accidentally reads your memories and finds out about the soul race's secrets, wouldn't that be harming the soul race? That's why we're doing this for your own good. Murong laughed coldly in his heart. These old fogies could say whatever they wanted. In any case, the mouths belonged to them. However, making you stay in the soul race forever isn't a solution. So, for the sake of resolving this matter, we've decided to take a look at your memories. If you really haven't devoured Hun Xian's memories, then you'll be able to regain your freedom. However, if you've really devoured Hun Xian's soul, then we'll take away all the memories related to Hun Xian. Murong's face was extremely gloomy. These fellows probably don't just have this objective, right? He knew about the soul devourer technique. It was a taboo technique of the soul race, and even Dao Lords weren't able to come into contact with it. If it was in the past, then perhaps they wouldn't have any thoughts about this taboo technique. However, after witnessing Hun Xian, they would really be surprised if they still didn't have any thoughts about it. Even Hun Xian could easily advance to the peak of the Dao Lord realm. So what about them? Wouldn't they be able to directly charge into the legendary Dao Lord realm? The desire for strength was something that every single cultivator pursued. These ancestors of the soul race were no exception. Some people wouldn't disregard everything while pursuing formidable strength, just like Hun Xian. On the other hand, these four ancestors of the soul race were probably just like Hun Xian. Moreover, even if it wasn't because of the taboo technique, it was impossible for Murong to allow them to search his soul or even read it. Would he even be able to survive if they found out about his memories? Could it be that we're really going to shed all pretenses today? Murong was rather displeased in his heart. He was already thinking about all sorts of methods to escape. However, no matter what cultivation technique he possessed, it was useless when facing four Dao Lords. Murong, why aren't you opening up your soul? The ancestor of the soul race that Murong had met for the first time suddenly shouted explosively. At the same time, an extremely enormous pressure swept over like a torrent. Why? Murong stood towering on the spot, and his eyes were blazing with flames as he gazed at the ancestor of the soul race. However, to his surprise, he was able to sense the surging pressure emanated by the ancestor of the soul race. However, he didn't feel any discomfort at all. It was even to the extent that he didn't feel any pressure at all. What's going on? Could it be because of the violet light again? I'm directly immune to the pressure of the experts of the soul race? Or perhaps I'm directly immune to the pressure of the cultivators of the other races as well. If it's like that, then it's too heaven-defying. The ancestor of the soul race couldn't help but be surprised when he noticed that Murong hadn't been forced to kneel on the ground by his pressure. However, he immediately became furious. Why? Because you're a member of the soul race, and because I'm the ancestor of the soul race. I can order you around, or even kill you. Murong was extremely furious. Someone like you can become the ancestor of the soul race? It wouldn't take a few years for the soul race to fall into complete decline with someone like you. You bunch of ingrates. Could it be that you're going to treat a great contributor to the soul race like this? If it wasn't for me, all of you would have been devoured by Hun Xin a long time ago. I tried my best to turn the situation around, yet not only are all of you not grateful to me, you actually intend to kill me? Is this how the soul race does things? Burning bridges after crossing the river? Getting rid of the donkey once it's no longer useful? Murong's rage soared to the heavens. Without any more scruples, he started scolding at the four soul race old ancestors. The faces of the four old ancestors were steely green as their auras went berserk. Their killing intense soared, and they were about to strike at Murong directly. However, Murong was going all out as well as he scolded these four ingrates madly. He scolded so much that the four old ancestors could barely hold back their urge to spit out blood and die. Little B Asterisk starred, "I'm going to kill you." Finally, one of the old ancestors exploded. With a roar, he stretched out his hand and slapped out at Murong. If Murong were to be struck by that slap, he would definitely die. Chapter 2187. Clap, clap, clap. Just as the Soul Clan's patriarch reached out his hand to slap Murong, a series of claps came from outside the hall. At the same time, a figure appeared beside Murong out of thin air. "Murong, well said." A familiar voice rang in Murong's ears. At this moment, the Soul Clan's patriarch's attack had already landed. Both Murong and the person who came were enveloped by his palm. It was obvious that the Soul Clan's patriarch wanted to kill everyone who came. In fact, he did not even have the time to see who it was before he attacked. One could imagine how intense his desire to kill Murong was. The Soul Clan's patriarch's attack was about to land. This slap could turn Murong into dust. He would not be able to resist at all. However, Murong relaxed at this moment. In fact, he even revealed a smile on his face. This was because he already knew who the person who came was. Boom! Seeing that the other party wanted to kill him as well, the anger in the person's heart surged. Without saying a word, he directly threw a punch over. Boom! After a loud, dull sound, the person stood still on the spot. However, his opponent, the old ancestor of the Soul Clan, was forced to take over a dozen steps back. He only came to a stop after breaking the floor of the hall. At this moment, the other three Soul Clan's patriarchs stood up from their seats. Each of them looked at the person who came with anger. Hun Dan, what's the meaning of this? The person who came was Hun Dan, the #1 genius of the Soul Clan. It was also because of Hun Dan that Murong could relax. Otherwise, he did not know what would happen to him. Hun Dan looked at the four Soul Clan's patriarchs furiously. "I should be asking you this. What's the meaning of this? Murong saved our entire Soul Clan and prevented us from being exterminated. How dare you treat him like this?" Hun Dan was really angry. This time, if he had not arrived in time, Murong would have been killed. If Murong was killed, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Moreover, he never thought that these ancestors would be so shameless as to want to kill Murong. "We didn't do anything. We just wanted to check his memories." If he hadn't read Hun Xion's memories and learned the secrets of the soul race, we wouldn't have done anything to him. We're not trying to harm him. We're just doing it for the good of the Soul Clan. An ancestor of the Soul Clan said in a deep voice while looking at Hunning. Murong sneered and said, "I'm afraid it's not just that, right?" Although he didn't know what secrets Hun Xion knew about the soul race, he didn't know what secrets Hun Xion knew. But you didn't do it to protect the secret of the soul race. You just want to obtain the taboo cultivation technique. When Murong Yu said the words taboo cultivation method, the four Spirita's old ancestors' expressions changed. Hun Dan, who had been paying attention to the four of them, looked even uglier. Although the four great ancestors had not confirmed or denied Murong Yu's words, their actions had betrayed their true thoughts. The taboo cultivation method was the taboo of the Soul clan. No one was allowed to cultivate it. Moreover, after the incident with Hun Xen, Hun Dan clearly understood the terror of the taboo cultivation method. The four great ancestors were more powerful than Hun Xin. If they were as crazy as Hun Xin, who could stop them? Then, wouldn't the Soul clan be exterminated? We can't let them obtain the taboo cultivation method. Murong Yu, I'll protect him. Hun Dan's eyes shone brightly. He had made up his mind. He had never allowed the four great ancestors to touch Murong Yu. Now, because of the taboo cultivation method, he disdained to protect Murong Yu at all costs. What if Murong Yu had really read Hun Xin's memories? Then, the four great ancestors would have obtained the taboo cultivation method. Therefore, before the four great ancestors could react, Hun Dan had already taken a step forward and stood in front of Murong Yu. He shielded Murong Yu behind him as he stared coldly at the four great ancestors. Murong Yu, don't you dare slander us. How dare you slander our great ancestors? Murong Yu, you have no respect for your elders. You really deserve to die. You have no manners. Today, I'll teach you a lesson. The four great ancestors scolded Murong Yu. Although they said different things, they all denied Murong Yu's statement. They cannot admit it. Otherwise, the number one genius of the Soul clan would not be easy to talk to. Boom! As they spoke, the four great ancestors attacked at the same time. Each of them reached out their hands and avoided Hun Dan. They went straight for Murong Yu. In Hun Dan's eyes, the four old ancestors' actions further proved that they were guilty. Murong Yu was right. So, he roared furiously and slapped his palms forward as well. He was going against the four great ancestors of the Soul clan by himself. Bang! 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 Hun Dan's figure shook slightly, and he took 3 steps back repeatedly in the end before he was able to stabilize himself. Even though Hun Dan was strong, the four great ancestors of the Soul clan weren't weak, and their strengths were formidable as well. Moreover, it was 4 against 1, so there was a limit to Hun Dan's strength. But in reality, it was still Hun Dan who had the upper hand. He'd merely taken 3 steps back, but he'd stabilized himself after 3 steps. On the other hand, his opponents, the four great ancestors of the Soul clan, had taken over 10 steps back at the same time. However, some had only taken 10 steps back while others had taken 17 or 18 steps back. The gap between their strengths was very easy to discern. After they stabilized themselves, all of them gazed at Hun Dan with astonishment. Even though their strengths weren't at the top of the Downlord realm, and they weren't amongst the strongest ancestors of the Soul clan. However, their strengths couldn't be considered to be weak amongst Downlord realm cultivators. Yet now, their joint forces had been blasted back by a single move from Hun Dan. Exactly how terrifying was this number one genius of the Soul clan? He was at least 2 realms stronger than them. Otherwise, it was utterly impossible for him to possess such formidable combat strength. Moreover, Hun Dan was standing on the spot in a composed manner at this moment, and he seemed to have not exerted his full strength. Murong Yu's eyes flickered with traces of a cold glow as he stood behind Hun Dan. The 4 great ancestors of the Soul clan hadn't noticed it, but he'd noticed it. Hun Dan's body was still coiled with the evil energy when he appeared. Over a year of time wasn't sufficient for him to suppress the evil energy within his body. Hun Dan had probably rushed over to rescue Murong Yu after hastily suppressing the evil energy within his body. When he thought up to here, Murong Yu was slightly moved. However, the evil energy within Hun Dan's body had become even more restless after Hun Dan attacked just now. The evil energy that coiled around his body had strengthened by quite a bit. If this continued, then the evil energy within Hun Dan's body would completely gain the upper hand. At that time, Hundan would be controlled by the evil energy and become a devil that killed without batting an eyelid. It was precisely because he had to suppress the evil energy at all times that Hundan was unable to utilize his full combat strength. Otherwise, with the strength he used to suppress Hun Xin, he could easily suppress the four great ancestors of the Soul Clan. Hundan, we four great ancestors represent the will of the entire Soul Clan. Are you going to go against the will of the Soul Clan? Must you stop us? One of the ancestors looked at Hundan furiously. Even though Hundan was the #1 genius of the Soul Clan, anyone who stood in his way was his enemy. So long as it was an enemy, then it had to be eliminated. So, the ancestor who spoke had already aroused killing intent towards Hundan. All of you can't represent the will of the Soul Clan, because all of you aren't worthy. Hundan laughed coldly. He was thoroughly disappointed in the four stubborn patriarchs. If they cultivated a forbidden cultivation technique, then they would definitely become the next Hun Xin. So, Hundan had aroused killing intent towards them. In any case, the Soul Clan didn't just have four Downlord Realm ancestors. Even though killing them would cause the Soul Clan's overall strength to decline, eliminating the Black Sheep was a good thing for the Soul Clan. Hundan has gone against the will of the Soul Clan, and he's a traitor to the Soul Clan. However, out of consideration for the fact that he's rendered meritorious service in saving the Soul Clan, we'll capture and imprison him for now. Everyone, let's attack and suppress Hundan first. One of the ancestors signaled to the other three with his eyes. In the next moment, all four of them attacked simultaneously. All of you are really stubborn. I'll kill all of you today. Hundan was filled with killing intent as he waved his hand and moved Murong Yu outside the hall. And then he started a battle with the four ancestors. Rumble. The battle had just begun, yet the hall was blasted into powder by their terrifying strength. Even if Murong Yu had reacted quickly and swiftly moved away from the hall, but he was still struck by the terrifying aftershock to the point blood sprayed from his mouth. The combat strength of a Dao Lord was too terrifying. The four ancestors of the Soul Clan clearly intended to suppress Murong Yu and read his memories. Moreover, Hundan was the greatest obstacle to their ability to read Murong Yu's memories. The four ancestors who were determined to obtain Hundan had to eliminate him. So, they didn't hold back at all, and every single one of their attacks smashed towards Hundan's lethal points. At the same time, they'd even utilized their treasures and origin artifacts, and they ceaselessly smashed them toward Hundan under their command. As he watched the battle between the four of them, Chunshi felt that this was the Soul Clan's territory after all, so they'd intentionally suppress their attacks within a certain area of effect. Otherwise, the entire territory of the Soul Clan would be unable to withstand a single blow and would be razed to the ground. Murong Yu was slightly anxious, because he noticed that the evil energy within his body grew stronger every single time Hundan attacked. On the other hand, when the evil energy grew stronger, Hundan had to split even more of his strength to suppress it. But in this way, the strength he possessed to deal with the four ancestors would weaken. Moreover, once his strength weakened, he would gradually not be a match for the four ancestors. If such a vicious cycle continued, then Hundan would definitely be suppressed in the end. Murong Yu didn't know if the four ancestors would kill Hundan, but the four old ancestors would definitely kill him. Should I leave now or what? Murong Yu was instantly conflicted in his heart. If he teleported away, then he believed that Hundan would be able to escape the four ancestors' attacks. But what if the four ancestors were overwhelmed by rage and disregarded everything to kill Hundan in the end? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.